Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the We Know Traitors podcast over here on RHAP. I am your host, the Duke of Deception, Pooya Vakili. Kicking off, officially, we're going to call this the kickoff to the Traitors USA Season 4 coverage over here on RHAP. The road to Season 4 begins here today with what we started last year, and we're going to make an annual tradition now, which is the pre-season player profiles here, where every day for the next however bit until we get to the premiere January 8th, every day you will get a brand new podcast in your feed of me talking to an expert about one of these players on this season of the Traitors. Now, as you may notice, and if you are good at math, there are more than one person here with me today. There's actually three of us here. That's because we're kicking off with the one and only Rob Cesternino, of course, as predicted, but I needed all hands on deck, and this was going to be a special one, so we needed some special guests for it. Now, I don't even need to make an introduction here, but it's a formality, so I'm going to do it. It's America, it's the US Season 4. We've got America's house guest. We've got my GOAT, the one and only Eric Stein is here with us today. Eric, how you doing?
Guys, I'm so thrilled to be here. I know late in the summer I went on a murderous rampage, but things have come down from that, and now I'm ready to talk about some more murders. So I'm really excited. We're here for the man of the hour, the man who has talked more reality TV than anyone. So time to find out if he can put his money where his mouth is.
Yep. I'd have put together a group that's going to be very honest about their thoughts on RHAP. So we're going to have a fun time here. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. And the one and only, honestly, surprised to see him with clothes on today, but it makes sense given that he's wearing his RHAP shirt. It's the one and only Mike Bloom.
Yes, I've double layered at this point, not only because it's the cold winter months, but because I also had to have my death-laden shirt on, as well as getting to talk with 1/3 of the mastermind, a man who stepped into his own type of turret earlier this summer. Pooya, what's your level on the David after Dentist, is this real life scale right now? Because you and I talked when the cast was officially revealed, when it was out in the open that Rob would be participating. But since then, we now have a premiere date. We now have trailers. We have actual footage of Rob spinning a globe in the Traitors castle. Is it feeling more cognizant to you?
Yeah, it's still surreal, which isn't going to come as a shock to anybody. I think what's really put it into gear now is Traitors Canada is currently running, and seeing people that I know well there in Omer, in Kevin, in Venus, I'm like, oh, this is how it's going to feel times 10. Because again, I know Rob way better. I've literally talked to this man for hours on end. I've listened to him for even more hours on end. So it's going to be wild. I don't think I'm quite ready. The footage was really what it was, because it's better than anything I could have dreamed up. But it's also been very, very good, favorable footage so far. And I know Rob's going to have probably some goofy moments, and I'm here for those also. So we're going to have a good time.
I feel like I'm living vicariously through him to an extent.
Mhm.
So this is one of the longest reality TV layoffs of all time, from his last appearance to this one. And I cannot tell you the countless number of conversations that Rob and I have had about if we were to ever have the chance to play again, and what would that look like, and 20 years of thoughts bubbling up to the surface. And, when I was in Big Brother casting back in the day, as many people know, Rob was originally slated to be a Big Brother house guest, something I think he would have been marvelously suited for. And he got poached for Survivor. And casting actually told me outright that they have been searching for their Rob ever since they lost Rob. And when I
He was
walked
the
in
one
the
that
door,
got away.
they said, "Oh my God, he's here." And to me, as a reality superfan, that was a huge honor at the time. It's still a huge honor to this day. And so I almost feel like I'm living it through him. What happens to him happens to me in this situation. He's an avatar for so many of us in this community. So it's incredibly surreal, super bizarre, well-deserved, but now it's happening, guys. It's not just a thought project, it's happening, good, bad, or in between. So now we got to deal with the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I'm curious, Eric, when, this Rob Cesternino form of the Na'vi woke up and your avatar came to life. I mean, when you found out this news, was this a surprise to you, given, as you mentioned, the conversations that you and he had sparingly through the years about, hey, if we ever get the chance to go back?
I was flabbergasted and completely offended that he had not reached out to me for strategic advice. In my mind, this man is one of my dear friends. I had to have a reckoning, a come to Jesus moment where I realized I'm not even his 5,000th closest friend. Why wasn't I on all of the planning phone calls? I'm one of the great strategic minds of all time, at least in my own mind. Yeah, no, it was a total surprise to me. And I was so excited for him. Literally thrilled. It is so well deserved. And here's where I can really relate to him. He will tell you he's just happy to be there, just happy to be considered, that the experience, he's at a place in life, he gets to go to this beautiful castle and play this wonderful game with wonderful people. Bullshit. Cesternino that is a great party line, and I'm sure there is some element of it that is the truth, but this man is a strategist at heart. He loves reality TV. His life is built on reality TV, and this is an opportunity that he's going to take seriously, and he deserves it. He has deserved many other opportunities through the years, and I'm really excited that he has it.
Yeah, and I just cannot wait to see, because like you said, Eric, we're done with the fantasy. Now it's a reality, and now once we see him for like 5 minutes on TV, it's gonna be like, okay, now it's real, and now we want to see how he does. We're hoping he does. Always hope for the best, expect the worst, because that'll make your heartbreak a lot less sad. But I'm optimistic right now until we look under the hood, which is exactly what we're going to do here today. Because while some of you will be listening to this and you would have known Rob as the podcaster, because Lord knows every year rather, I will see tweets and posts on Blue Sky about how I did not know. Today I learned Rob Cesternino was a Survivor player. So he is a player.
Pooya, I cannot wait for the fan cams of young Rob Cesternino like we saw with Boston Rob earlier this year.
I tormented this man. I sent Rob so many Boston Rob thirst traps this past January, and now we can send him his own. It's going to be great.
That feels even more tormenting,
Why? It's yourself.
Depending on the type of person, that could be an even worse insult.
Well, one thing is for certain, two things are for sure. He has had a great history on, I was about to say short history, but decent amount of history on television. We're going to look at that today, and we're going to put a lot of you on to what Rob has done on TV before his return to TV this January 8th. So without any further ado, who would like to kick us off here and talk about Rob the player?
Well, Mike, no doubt, is the true expert here, but I will start with just my broad stroke sort of memories and thoughts on Rob as a player. I believe that Rob on Survivor the Amazon was as dominant and innovative as a player as we have seen on Survivor to that point. And sometimes people, treat OG players like they're legendary simply because where they came chronologically in time, but that's not what makes them legends. Because the legends are the people who did moves we had never seen before, who laid the blueprint for so many of the greats, who took elements of what they saw before, brought it into the game, evolved it, took those next steps. And Rob played a game that, in my opinion, we had not seen to that point. A game where he was so far ahead of the rest of his cast. I talk about this a lot, but reality TV is one of the only competitive games where the playing field does not need to be fair and is not fair. Everyone in the NFL is one of the 500 best football players in the United States, but not everybody who plays Survivor is one of the best players to ever play. You could have LeBron James against a middle school bench player, in some of these seasons. And that's what Rob had his cast looking like out there. He had them twisted up. He had a masterful read on the game board. He took people and turned them into pieces in ways that we had not yet seen to that point, and utilized enemies, allies, reshuffling the deck over and over again. And I would, as we get into this, I would describe him as an ultimate opportunist on Survivor the Amazon. If you gave Rob a millimeter, he took miles and miles and miles. If you slipped up and said the wrong thing in front of this man, or even bickered in his general presence with someone else, he found a way to make it fit his game and make it work. So before we get into pros, cons, everything in between about how this experience is going to go, in order to have this conversation, we need to give the man his due. And this is not butt kissing. This is the factual truth coming from Mike and I as diehards of this genre. This man is one of the greatest Survivor players that there was. And a lot that came afterwards is thanks to him. And the thing is, though, that was 20 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. It's a long time ago, and a lot of life has happened since then. So that's what's so intriguing here, right? Is that we don't know what Rob today is going to do in this situation. What we do know is when afforded the opportunity many moons ago, he came armed and ready to make the most of the opportunity. And anyone who wanted to take it away from him, he was ready to rip it out of their hands. He was willing to lie, cheat, and steal, do anything to win. But also, that was a very different time and place, not just for Rob, but in reality TV. Mm-hmm. The fan base and the players, especially here, where it's not all competitive reality TV players, feel a little bit differently about pointless lying than they used to. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how it translates.
Yeah, I think the overall sense would be that Rob's libido has certainly changed from the Amazon to Traitors Season 4. I certainly hope so, but I think his gamesmanship has not. The sort of masterful, innovative aspects that Eric is talking about that he brought to this game, we can certainly get into more details about. I mean, I even think the archetype that he represents was game-changing in a number of ways. Yes, Survivor had only been on the air for 5 seasons prior to Rob being on, but he was the first and maybe one of the best examples of the nerdy super fan who knows the game inside and out and is able to put that knowledge into effect. Look, if the new era of Survivor is any indication, it could be a mixed bag at best when super duper fans play the game. You can have all the knowledge in the world about who went home when and who won what, but if you can't implement that into your own game, then it's just basic facts that'll get you, I don't know, a medallion at a bar trivia event. But Rob was able to, as Eric said, sort of look upon the past. In particular, the thing that he cites the most is the big flip that happens at the final 9 in Survivor Marquesas. Is the first major power shift in Survivor history, where a group of bottom feeders, essentially, who knew there was one big controlling alliance, all said, wait a minute, there's 4 of them and there's 5 of us. Let's work together, overthrow the bourgeoisie, and let the proletariats truly run rampant in this game. But even through that, yes, Rob took inspiration, but the meta of Survivor up to that point was very simple. You make an alliance, you establish a majority, you bring that alliance to the end of the game. Even in something like Survivor Marquesas, they clean swept the road to 4. This new bottom feeder alliance made up the final 5. Rob, of course, did not watch Survivor Thailand, but we had just seen a huge example of that. And Rob was able to take that idea and quite literally flip it on its head. He is one of the most individually minded players we experience in early game Survivor, where I think, as Eric mentioned, and we can certainly get into some specific moments, he was able to look at the game board each and every episode and say, okay, here's where I am positioned. Where can I go to not only better my short-term prospects, but especially better my long-term prospects? This is as apparent as the first episode, where it is a surprisingly split vote. It is 4-3-1. And we get from the very beginning, Rob saying, I am in the middle right now. He is the kingmaker. He will determine who stays and who goes in this men's tribe. And it will certainly not be the last time this happens. And I think part of it is Rob's presentation. Certainly at that time, this was for lack of a better term, a season full of young, horny people. And Rob was certainly kind of the screech of the group, if I'm being completely honest. Like, he was the class clown. He was part of the quote unquote younger, hotter alliance. But as we'll get into later in the season, he didn't necessarily feel like a part of that. And so he was able to, I think, be able to play up on that energy, be able to vibe with a lot of people out there based on that. But it's something that we have experienced, obviously, to great effect over his many years of podcasting, that Rob is fantastic at using his sense of humor as a smoke screen, especially when it comes to having tougher conversations. And one of the many reasons why he was so deadly in the Amazon is because he was just looked at as this churlish, jocular jester in the king's court, only to realize much well into the season, like, oh no, this man has a real chance of sitting on the throne.
Yeah, well, also, so many players just let death take them, right? It's us versus them. Oops, I'm outnumbered, and that's that. And they just shrug it off. Whereas Rob would look for every inroad possible. He saw players who needed a home and took them in. He saw people who were enemies and turned them into allies. He hopped back and forth, broke and then repaired relationships over and over and over again, and was able to do it because of the affability that you're talking to. He had the mind frame to try and drag goats with him to the end. He took people that no one even wanted to talk to and turned them into allies. And I think what he was doing was he thought about, what does this person need from me, or need from anyone out here right now? Do they need an ally? Do they hate so-and-so? Do they want to settle a beef? And he capitalized on that. And he turned what they needed from him into making them work for him without them even realizing it. And there was a lot of subtlety to it. And as you said, Mike, this is how you know you have an iconic, amazing player. How many of the Amazon players left the Amazon thinking to themselves, that MF for Rob, I never thought it would be him of all people. I did not, he was weeks ahead of the game. And then when he found himself up against the wall, he spun it around so fast and so quick that it didn't even feel like he was. He was playing on a very innovative level. To your point, Mike, he's not going to come in as unassuming this time. He's not going to come in as the class clown that no one is familiar with. That's what we get in all returning player reality shows, right? Your reputation precedes you. And his reputation preceded him in Survivor All-Stars. And we can get into that in greater depth as well. But some might say that really he was dead on arrival in Survivor All-Stars. As soon as he was in the draw, he had no winners on his tribe. He was the most recent it boy and perceived threat. And they did not even allow him to get any footing whatsoever. Is that in the potential batch of outcomes for Rob here at the Traitors? Rob, a man who even the uninformed amongst him, they're going to know this man owns and operates a reality TV discussion empire. That is not just a target. That is a glowing, screaming, blistering target that is very different than the Rob who got to play the Amazon, where no one saw it coming. So it's going to be a completely different approach to how he has to apply that strategy and that charisma this time around, because this time they're going to be prepared for him.
And the good news is, I think Rob is prepared for them as well, because Rob has been covering the Traitors with me from season 1, thankfully. And then I feel like, obviously, I don't know the exact journey of when he gets his call up to pull up to this, but it's been like a couple of seasons where that's kind of the number one question almost every guest we had on was asking him, like, Rob, your turn coming? Are you going to do it? So I think, y'all mentioned he was the OG student, the first one, the original. I think he's kept that same energy to a certain level. I think he is somebody who, like, his humor is there. And with the podcast more and more, I feel like the art of clip farming has become a big thing with him. He knows where the joke is. He knows the line to say to make the big reaction happen. But I think at the same time, underneath all of that, there's still an analyst there. There's still somebody who knows what they're doing, who is a studied student of the game and kind of knows how to go about it. Now, Eric, I will agree with you. I think that him having this platform, this massive platform, is almost unavoidable. If they don't have the ball knowledge there, all it takes is one or two people, and we know there's one or two on this cast who know what he does, to be like, This guy, yeah, he's got a whole empire full of podcasts and shows that he covers. He covers all these shows. He knows them in and out. The one caveat and the one thing I'm very grateful for, and I would not have said this watching Survivor All-Stars, I'm grateful for Boston Rob here, for Rob Cesternino. And that's because I feel like if Rob had gone on the show before Boston Rob, the amount of people that would have just assumed he's Boston Rob because of the Rob from Survivor, they would have taken him out for that. He would have had to pay that invoice. Now they've seen the winner Rob. He was on last season. This Rob is the Rob that didn't win, doesn't have a W under him, doesn't have a championship. So maybe it's a little more forgiving. And I think Rob can give more goofy energy than Boston Rob did. And that could help him.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to push back on this because I think that Rob and Danielle and Parv coming before him and being traitors is a very damning, very concerning aspect of this game for him, because it does, even if his own reputation doesn't precede him, maybe theirs does. You know, maybe he's playing against people who aren't anywhere near as well studied. Maybe in Sequester on the flight over, they watched the prior season. Maybe they saw.
They better not have been flying American Airlines to Scotland. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. See, another potential landmine.
Imagine how surreal that's. That they're like, we don't know who this guy is. We'll figure it out. And then they sit down and they see their competitor's face greeting them, saying,
well, the
look at all my reality TV podcasts.
The Traitors podcast is on there. If they're like, oh, there's a Traitors thing here, let me watch that. And then they see this guy talking, that would be a nightmare. They better have taken any other airline.
Yikes. We jest, but that could happen. You know, it's an actual
oh my God.
Is that like the equivalent of like a DR leak on Big Brother of like, oh, we overheard Shelby talking about her law career?
Yeah, for real. So, I mean, my concern here is that, and this is a little bit meta big brain here, I'm going to admit, but is this the year that all of the CBS competitive reality stars pay the receipts of what came before them? In fact, there's a very notable example about this in Big Brother history that involves fellow Traitors contestant Ian Terry. He won as a big time young nerd super fan, in his own words. That happened again a couple of seasons after that, where another 21-year-old young nerd came in and won. Same exact blueprint as Ian, very unassuming. No one saw it coming until it was too late. Well, the next time a player like that entered the house, they were out before the first week of play, was done. They jumped down the throat, and that guy paid the receipts of what had come before him. My concern here is, if I'm a housewife, if I'm anyone in the extended celebrity side of the casting and less on the CBS side of the casting, and my familiarity with the show is that I've watched a few episodes from each of the seasons, and I've seen a Boston Rob in action, and I've seen a Danielle Reyes in action. I don't want these people around. I don't know about you guys. And it's tough because you don't want that to come into the game. You don't want to have any bearing on the game, but it looms, it's there, and yeah. So I actually think Boston Rob could come into play again here, right? Because if that's what you watched last time, and Rob is a great talker, and if he gets going at a round table and it evokes some of what we saw in prior seasons from those survivors, I think it's going to start sounding some alarm bells for people.
And I think that's the big question is, will he start going, and when will he start going? I mean, this is a strategy that Rob has professed for years on Big Brother, which is go to sleep for the first half of the game. Even in Survivor to a certain extent, again, while he was in a good power position, he lay fairly dormant. He sort of let other people make the moves around him until this 1-2 punch at the final 7 and final 6 that I can certainly get into more detail with later to show his opportunism. But Rob, I think even back then when he was a little bit more of a charlatan, he was a little bit more of a showman, especially. He took a lot of stuff from Will Kirby in Big Brother into Survivor, which is like, you can be a devious MFer and be entertaining at the same time. But I think what Rob has been able to glean, and even back then still had glimpses of, is this ability to like be that character to us and not necessarily to everybody else. And I think that's maybe where the podcasting comes into play as well, because Rob is very good at honestly ceding time to us, loud mofos, us people who love to just talk until everyone's ears fall off. And he's been very good at just knowing the opportunity of when to chime in, when to help guide and steer a conversation. And I think especially if you talk about paying the invoice, we saw last year what happened with people like Jeremy and Tony, where it's like they're sort of louder, more outspoken selves at the beginning of the game. And even though they weren't traitorous, it put enough of a spotlight on them to say they're gamers and they're speaking up. It's time for them to go. I think that Rob has enough of that kind of DL personality IRL to be like, all right, I'm going to take a step back, let the other gamers, give themselves enough rope. And then hopefully that gives me enough rope to make a lasso and try to at least scrape my way out of like, well, you got rid of all the gamers. Eric, I think that's an incredibly valid point that I think if anyone is metagaming this out, especially considering the streak of gamers we've had as traders, we know that producers like to pick people who come from strategic shows to kind of help lead the gamey conversations around the turret. It would be understandable that that group would be looked at first just upon pure glance. And he is unfortunately among 5 or 6 of them, as opposed to the larger groups that usually come with each season.
But here's my question about all of this. I think what you're saying makes sense if Rob had been on several shows recently and knew that there were several more shows coming up behind it. And you could play with the luxury of this is not the one. Okay. But what if it is the one? What if this is the one phone call he has gotten in 20 years, the one that he decided to say yes to? And that makes me beg the question, Pooya, what is he playing for? Is he playing the win? Is he playing for his legacy and reputation to say, I am the one, I am the smartest to never win? And is he going for what we got from Suri the first time around? Is he playing for future casting opportunities? Is he playing for his business? Is he playing for his family? Is he playing for fun? And I don't think that this is as much of a question for a Rachel Riley or a Boston Rob who's getting another call instantaneously, right? This is 20 years, guys. It's a long time. He's talked about it every single day. So what is he there to do? Because I'm going to put, I am very much shared brained with Rob, and we have had these conversations before, right? So if I finally get a phone call and I'm going on the Traitors, I would be really worried to go to sleep because the game's already not in my hands. There's a lot of luck involved. I don't know all of the people. I don't know who has my fate in their hands. And what if I make no impact? What if I last 4 episodes? I'm purple in the edit, and then I'm going to be kicking myself. I won't be able to live with myself. If I went to sleep, did nothing, didn't get to show my strategy, didn't get to show my personality, but come in guns a-blazing, and then you have the Tony and Jeremy situation that you just laid out. So it's a very fine needle to thread, right? Where you come in, it's like, I want to show everyone what I can do. He has 20 years worth of ideas. He has all of these friends who are experts that he could have picked their brains ahead of time. But come in hot, you're in big trouble. But if you fall back, that phone's not ringing again. You're not getting more subscribers to your podcast network, right? So how do you think he's going to approach this? And what do you think his goal is here? Because we all know him intimately well, and I think that far more than anyone else who's probably ever been on this series is the meta of it all. Where does he fit into this? Where does he want to fit into this? And what is he out to do while he's there?
My read on Rob, and this kind of goes into, and this might be a niche reference, this truly will be, it's a glorified Zoom call game that we played in 2020. Rob played a game with us, an org with us online. It was him versus a lot of RHAP podcasters. And the number one feedback we saw from that was he still got it. And you could tell that was the highest compliment to Rob. He still got it. I think Rob's going to go into this wanting to, Mike, great strategy. Stay, go to bed. Don't think about much. And I think certainly I assume he's going to do a lot of world building and connection building early on. But I think to Eric's point, I think this man is going to want to be television gold. And I think he's going to approach it that way. I think the good news is, another point towards what you said, Mike, he is a confessional guy. He knows how to deliver that. So he can, as long as he's giving them gold there, he can be afforded the luxury of being quiet if they choose to show him doing that. The confessions might be going nowhere, right? They might just be on the cutting room floor. So I think, Eric, to me, my read is he's going to want to perform memorably, whether good or bad, perform memorably, kind of have people leave the show being like, he still got it. And also to provide memorable content. I think that's the two things he's going for.
Well, because go ahead, Eric.
All I was going to say is, but also what Rob is going to show up to the Traitors, right? And this is sort of an adjacent point, but Rob has not been shy in talking about the fact that he feels like some of his content from the Amazon has not necessarily aged as gracefully as he would have wanted. Rob is now a business owner. He is a family man, and
he's a father, and he is father.
Yeah, right. So you know, he knows this world so well. Is he being himself? Is this a curated personality? What Rob are we even going to see? Are we going to just see everybody's buddy? Are we going to see the cutthroat liar? Is it going to be a little of both? But I do think, and because this really rings true with me, I think that maybe it doesn't matter what he intended to do or wanted to do, because as soon as he's there, all bets are off. You know, the cobwebs are gone, and he's just going to start feeling it. That's my hope, at least, is that, you know, all of the pre-thought and the analysis and the everything, as soon as you're there, it's just, oh man, this is fun. And then he just himself, you know?
I mean, that's the thing. I remember Pooya earlier this year, and I don't know if Rob had any inclination at this point that he was in Traitors casting, but I remember him being livid at the finale of season 3. He said it was the worst ending ever, boring outcome. You know, why the hell were these purple people winning? So I think if you ask about like what is his goal, is that whether he is winning or whether he is losing, like he is making sure that he does not wind up like a Lord Ivar Mountbatten, you know, because what is the goal of Traitors? Let's be completely honest here. From a US specific perspective, which is focused a lot on celebrity, and we have seen, especially as of late, how much it can reinvent someone's career entirely. Boston Rob is doing a YouTube show with Dylan freaking Efron. Would not have expected that at the beginning of 2025. It is not necessarily about taking home a minuscule amount of money by sharing it 6 ways with people. It is about what is the impression that you're making on the screen, no matter how long you last. And I will bring in a bit of insider information right now. Because I had the chance to talk with Boston Rob Mariano about a myriad of topics. And one of them I asked was, did you give any advice to any Traitors players in the upcoming season 4? And he told me that he did have a conversation with Rob Cesternino. And this is directly what Boston Rob said to me, is that he said, I gave him the playbook on Traitors. From my perspective, he's not the same player that I am, so the advice they gave Rob was slightly different. I kind of gave him advice on how I think he should play if I were him. Because Traitors, there's really 2 ways to play. The optimal way to play Traitors is not the fun way to play Traitors. The optimal way is to be quiet and sit in the shadows, make it to the end, and do whatever. And Rob has too big of a personality for that. So I was like, man, you have to balance between going far and being great television. And I think he knows how to perform. I think he's going to do great, and I'm rooting for him.
Well, Mike, first of all, congratulations on learning Dylan Efron's name.
Finally, took me long enough.
Righted some past wrongs there. But I think it's a point well taken. You need to last long enough to be memorable also, right? So it is really a fine line of finding those moments, not Ivaring yourself, which is laugh out loud funny. I mean, literally the mere mention of his name made me laugh, let alone the context of it. And right. So making your moments count while you have them, and ideally lasting long enough to pile up a few of them. So that way you feel good about your experience there. I actually think that should be the goal as well. I don't know that it was his goal. Winning feels so inconsequential. Especially last season, they're splitting the money so many ways. Gabby talked ad nauseum about the fact that it took forever for her to even get that paltry amount of money after the filming. And so it's like, that's not Rob's goal here, right? So his goal here is to make the most of the opportunity. So I do think we're going to see a very active Rob. So now let's think about active Rob versus people who barely know where they are in the Amazon versus active Rob versus some people who are very savvy to it and other people who don't want to be savvy to it. They're put off by that level of strategy and gamesmanship and backstabbing. I think what we've learned on the Traitors is the Bravo idea of fighting and backstabbing is a little different than the CBS idea.
Yes.
Theirs is personal and frothy and campy, and CBS is just mean and self-advancing in a way that they don't always receive it the same way, you know? So
No.
I am curious. You put an active Rob into a group of people that don't know his lore, and do they like that? Do they love his ideas? Do they brainstorm with him and gobble them up? Is he making friends with everybody? Just like I was saying earlier in the podcast, how I feel like I'm his best friend, even though I am not. You know, does that rub off on everyone and he is able to do as he pleases? Or after 1, 2, 3 times of nudging someone and making a little bit of a suggestion, do they say like, whoa, this guy has a lot going on here. Like, what is this energy that I'm picking up on? He seems very devious, you know? And it's crazy to think that that could be held against you on reality TV. But I do think in recent years, you have seen with the house and the group, you know, mentality of it all. A lot of times if someone is playing, it's not always well received amongst the other players.
Yeah, I think that no matter what, no matter who he's chosen as, he does not have faithful of the faithful energy. This is not an aforementioned Dylan Efron energy that he's given off.
Right. Yeah, I think even if Rob is hard cleared as a faithful for a lot of people, I think that he's somebody who gets the final 8, 7. They're like, why are you still here? Like, there's no way you should still be alive because of the type of person and player you are, and he'll get punished for it. So I do think that for me, to be very open with everybody, I did not watch Rob on Survivor until last year. I kind of lived a lie for a little bit where no one knew, but I had not watched like the first 15 seasons of Survivor. And then I was just like, you know what? The time is now. So I started binging them, watched Rob's season. So before that, I only had Rob the person to go off of, you know, as who he is. So I think that some of the things you mentioned, Eric, I can picture him excelling in because of the way I've seen him interact with people. I've seen Rob is a bit of a chameleon in that depending on what room you put him in, he kind of does start giving that same room's energy out, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. I think, you know, just having watched him do, because back in the day, he used to do these patron casts where once a month he had his phone line open, anyone could call him and he would answer every single call. And that's standard, you know, you have a Patreon, that's standard business. What really impressed me with Rob, as someone who then got inspired to do his own thing and has taken inspiration from that in my streaming, Rob remembered everyone's names. These calls would be like 1 or 2 months apart. He would remember their names. He would remember what they called about. He would remember little details about them. And I think that that's the Rob we're going to get early on. Personality will be there. The zingers will be there. The one-liners will be there. But mostly it's him just like becoming an information bank and taking a lot of it in before realizing, okay, what kind of sense of humor does this person have that I can enter in with? Because I don't think he's going to come and be like, all right, clear the table. It's my time now. I don't think he's that level of active. He's this like subtle, like come into the party and watch everybody for a little bit active, have a drink or two active, and then get involved.
Well, I think this is a great point because I think that all reality TV personalities in their day-to-day life, they are like suck the air out of the room, big personalities.
Yeah.
But when you put them and stack them with the other personalities, I do believe that Rob is going to be one of the more low-key personalities in this
100%.
group. And he is not going to chew the scenery, at least not in the group. Maybe in the confessionals, absolutely, that's great. But I do think that that's a really interesting point, is that I do think that he would be a much bigger threat on Survivor 50 than on the Traitors, because here he actually could be a little bit unassuming, just a really regular guy. And there are actually some other regular guys in the cast. And I just think that, in that regard, yeah, he might just kind of feel like, yeah, he's very pleasant to have breakfast with here. He's not bothering me in any which way. But then the question becomes is, as soon as he becomes activated, does that sort of like go away?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that we need to remember is that Rob has made a career for 15 plus years out of talking with and handling, to your point, other reality TV personalities. He knows exactly when talking with somebody with some of the biggest, most brazen personas we have seen on our screens, to step back, to allow them to take up that space. He knows when the spotlight should be shown on them. Now, from his perspective, largely it's been for the sake of making content. Here it might be more so like, I'm going to let you throw yourself under the bus. So I think Rob is more than happy to be a bit of that fly on the wall, to be able to still chime into conversations. So it's not of like why are you so effing quiet, Rob Cesternino? What do you think you're doing? I mean, also looking at the fact that he has won only one immunity challenge in Survivor history, but the one that he won is a Survivor Classic called Touchy Subjects, where everyone took a questionnaire about the competition and you had to guess what the majority said for each answer. This is actually a challenge we saw last season in Traitors to a different effect, right? This was the chessboard challenge where the Traitors chose the answer to each question. There's a little bit of quite literal 4D chess there in terms of what you think the Traitors would have picked. But it shows that Rob did have at that moment a general pulse on how everyone was feeling about everyone else. I mean, I think the main facet of Rob's game that I really want to fixate on that is most applicable to Traitors is an open mind and open relationships. And again, not speaking about that libido perspective. But the reason why Rob was able to make some incredible stuff happen towards the end game is because he had his options open. He was at the final 7 in this very ironclad alliance with Heidi and Jenna and Alex. They were so set in stone that they were all talking about going in on a Sonic restaurant together. They were going to pool their money, which maybe the Traitors winners from last season had done. I haven't checked the trades yet as to see if that ended up becoming a possibility. But then Alex is so comfortable and so forward that he straight up tells Rob, like, listen, when it gets down to us 4, because it will, probably going for you at 4, and you're probably going to go for me, and that's okay. And Rob's like, no, I'm going for you now. Like, you're saying that I am fated to finish in 4th place. Guess what? If I shake things up, the worst I could finish right now is 7th, but I guess it doesn't matter. I'd rather better my chances now and lose out earlier than just being guaranteed to lose at any point. And so this is where he's able to gather, not necessarily flipping over to another alliance. These were spare pieces. You know, Butch and Matt had just lost Roger and Dave, who they were the closest to, and so they were free agents. Christy was absolutely a free agent, did not want to work with the women necessarily, was kind of only doing so just due to the circumstances of the first couple of votes. And he said, okay, this is a way for me to bring together the alliance that I want to flip the game on its head. And not only did he do so, that's great, but as you mentioned, he cleaned up his mess. The next night even, he was belittled. He faced a very belligerent and angry Jenna and Heidi of, we had this plan, we had this Sonic restaurant, you blew it to smithereens. And so it looked like Rob was going to be in hot water, but they still had technically a 4-2 alliance. Jenna won immunity. Okay, maybe it's going to be Heidi. But then when Rob goes to Christy and says, okay, let's vote off Heidi, and Christy has a little bit of pause with the plan, Rob strikes at that opportunity again. He says, here's an opportunity for me to be able to curry favor with Jenna and Heidi, who at the very worst will be sent to the jury. At least they'll look at me in finer favor than they do right now. They think I'm scum. Let me try to be at least a step above scum. So he innovates. He goes to Jenna and Heidi, and he says, Christy is swinging between these two groups. Why don't we just go for her? And this has been a move that has been patented in Survivor a few times ever since, I think most infamously by Cirie with the Courtney boot at the final 6 in Survivor Exile Island. But this is the prototypical example, in my opinion, where he is able to, again, keep the options open, not only in terms of allies, but in terms of targets, to say, Christy feels so safe that she tells her loved one, I think it was her boyfriend in that episode, like, I have all the power. I'm not going home. Rob was able to get in the ears of the people who hate him the most and say, all right, we have a common enemy here. I'll go for you next time, but let's get her out. And look, he has certainly looked back on that move, perhaps with a little bit of regret, considering what Jenna especially goes on to do. But I think it does speak to his ability to just navigate where the chess pieces are at each and every moment. Now, Traitors is a bit more of a long game because people are sort of staying in these kind of semi-permanent roles. But I think if there is a shocking murder, if there is a huge banishment that shakes up his game, I could rely on Rob to be able to pivot very reliably and move into the next day.
Right. This is not Sandra Diaz Twine's Anyone But Me. This is anyone. Anyone, anytime, anywhere, any place, if it benefits me. And it's funny because you were saying how Boston Rob said that their gameplay is not that similar, but I was hearing some Boston Rob gameplay in there. As soon as Rob C's name comes up, it was off with their head one way or another. No, I'm not going to sit here and wait for you to vote me out at the final four. No, I'm not going to let you be wishy-washy. He took the game into his own hands by any means necessary at anyone's expense. I think it was really well documented in the Amazon that whether he thought fondly of him as this sort of, weirdo next door neighbor, like a sitcom character or something, he did not like Matthew. I don't think that he kept in touch with Matthew. I do not think he enjoyed his company. I do not think that they were on the same plane. And he still took him under his wings because he saw his value as a player in the game. A lot of people can't put aside personal feelings, and he weaponized him and managed him. This was a completely unglued guy who had all kinds of terrible ideas on the game. And Rob literally invented imaginary side quests to occupy his brain and keep him busy, or created outright fabrications to keep him in line. And that is a masterstroke, to see someone who is flailing but strong and say, I'm going to put aside the fact that he is making me physically uncomfortable to be around, and use him as an ally. There is no question in my mind he can gather the votes. He can do that through personality or logic or strategy. He can definitely take control of a roundtable if he wants. And he's really good, as I was saying early on, as we were teeing this up, at finding the smallest crack and breaking it wide open. He also has studied these shows. He knows the Traitors is a dogpiling game, right? So if a name comes up and it is not your name, then we go right back to the Sandra of it all. Well, okay, it's time to put my foot on this person's neck and end this round of play, right? So when he sees that someone is on the ropes, or someone is pissed at someone, or someone is floundering with nowhere to go, he will know exactly what to do to push them out or bring them in as needed, which keeps his possibilities incredibly wide open for the entirety of the game. It's a major strength that he has that other people are not going to have. I think we have seen in all 3 seasons of the Traitors, people sort of, for the most part, pigeonholed into their sort of pre-existing groups. A lot of times the housewives are rocking it with each other, and the CBS people are kind of almost forced to protect each other. And I do see Rob as someone who is going to be able to cross the party line, so to speak, and pick up a collection of people as needed. And that might not be the same people every time. It might be completely different people round after round.
Yeah, and I think that one of the key things with the Traitors, well, actually, before I say this, I want to correct this, and I'm assuming by this point, some of you have already taken to the comments to take us to task for this. Yeah, the American Airlines thing happened after the Traitors filmed.
But isn't it fun to dream?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a good time. That being said, no. So the Traitors, and Rob knows this, which I think is a huge help. The Traitors is a lot more luck-based than, every show is luck-based to a certain degree. The Traitors more than any of these other shows. You could do everything right and then cough in front of the wrong person, and they're going to vote you out. They're going to bring it up at the round table. So I think going in and knowing that is already a huge leg up to anybody that might not have thought about the game at that level, because I think, and we've seen some of the gamers of past try this, where they're like, listen, I'm a faithful, you're a faithful. It doesn't matter if this other person's a faithful. Let's just get rid of them. They're not working with us anyway. And then people find out about this and they'll punish you because, I'm sorry, you don't want to get rid of traitors? That's weird. So knowing stuff like that and then being able to operate in the background is going to be absolute key. And I think that having that knowledge already is great. And I think knowing that the game is a lot more luck-based allows you to play the game a lot more unapologetically / freely. Because, you know, to your point, Eric, you can play as conservative as one can and then be the nobody that randomly got murdered in the night at the end of episode 5 and be forgotten because of through no fault of your own. So what's the point in doing that?
So I guess one of the big questions I have is that we all know how Rob's game came to a tragic end in the Amazon, which you mentioned the relationship with Matthew. I think Mario Lanza describes it very aptly as like a Doctor and Frankenstein scenario where Rob, who is the most underestimated player, gets done in by someone who he underestimated in Matthew, who at the final 3 realizes how big of a threat Rob is and throws the final immunity challenge, knowing that he was the odds-on favorite to win. And if he had won, Rob at least thought that he would have taken him to the end. So he essentially sealed Rob's fate, saying, like, there's no way you can survive this challenge against Jenna Maraska, and that proved true. It's a little apples and oranges because, again, I think that Traitors is less of an individually minded game as much as we're talking up Rob's opportunism. Like, we just saw 4 people win it at the end of the day. Do we think that there's a way he could fall into that trap, whether it's like underestimating someone who gets picked to be a traitor and he has no idea, or someone that could cut his legs out from under him, to your earlier points, Eric?
I don't think so. I think that is probably a lesson learned, in my opinion, right? I think that I would be very wary of absolutely everyone. I think I would have the expectation that there could be unassuming people working against me. I think the best way to play the traitors is just assume no one's to be trusted. Everyone has the ability to end your game at any time and be very carefully worded. It's funny that I say very carefully worded as I jumble all of my words at the same time. But I think that he is definitely wise enough to the game to not overlook people. But I do think that the one chip that may be on his shoulder is that from Survivor All-Stars, where if now, good for him, he did build a podcast empire after that. But let's just imagine a world in which he did not build a podcast empire after that. You have someone who absolutely loved the game, who the host himself called the smartest to never win at his own finale, comes back a year later and it does not go well for him, right? So if he does not build this podcast empire, which establishes his place in Survivor forevermore, then he's sitting with this terrible taste in his mouth and a load of regret, and he's sitting on it for 20 years. And how do I know this? Because that's what has happened to me every single day for the last 20 years, where you say, but I could have done this, and what about this? And if I only had the chance to do this. So what if that guy shows up? What if the guy who is feeling a little bit of insecurity about it shows up? And what if he's looking around the table and it feels like he's outnumbered, and instead of going into I'm going to fix this mode, he goes into, oh God, this can't be happening again. Oh, I can't do this again. I needed to right my past wrongs. You see that sometimes on all-star seasons of shows and returning seasons of shows, that people are playing with the ghost of their own past. And it sometimes works out for the best, and those are lessons learned, and sometimes they haunt you again. So I don't see him going down the Matthew pitfall. But what if he goes down the All-Stars pitfall?
It'll be very interesting to see, because I think that the thing with the traitors for me is so much of it is going to be out of your control, because also you still, like, when you start and when you see everybody, you still don't know what role you're supposed to play. And then once you have that role, you do not know who your bedmates with. If you are a traitor, like who's up in that turret with you. And I think after that, even you don't know if the person you were bonding with earlier is on the same team you are. I think there's a lot of mental like exhaustion that's going to go into stuff like that. And I feel like it's tough because everything in me just wants to say, well, we won't know until the first cycle. We won't know until the first roundtable hits. Because I do think that my number one worry for Rob is that first, they take the blindfolds off. One person looks at Rob and says, that guy kind of looks nervous. I'm going to bring that up later. And then that shoots everything, that puts the panic in him. And then
he's a little twitchy, right? Like,
yeah.
I can see him fidgeting a little bit, touching his face.
Or will he be so steeled knowing the fact that he looks too stoic and people are like, that man is a statue.
Right. He's like sitting there, like not breathing,
Yeah. Red in the face.
The thing is, what's so fun about this exercise is that the reason we can discuss this and pick it apart in the way that we are is because we would all be in the exact same frame of mind. I would be, oh God, you have an itch, Eric. Don't touch it. Wait a minute. Maybe you should touch it. Oh God. It's just, and I do wonder, is there a case where the man knows too much, right? Is it just where you start almost acting oddly because you are so mindful of the correct way to act? I do not think so, but it's just so fun to talk through and imagine his state of mind that he's going to be in those situations. But I agree that that could just one itch in the wrong direction on that opening night, and it could set a avalanche effect.
They better dust that roundtable room. Look out! But I think that brings up another really interesting point: is that we began this all by saying one of the great things about Rob on Survivor was he was one of the first like successful super fans of the show, that he used the past precedent to form his own present and therefore also shape the future. You have people like Johnny Fairplay the very next season saying, I was inspired by Rob Cesternino. I have to imagine this man is incredibly well-researched. And I don't think he knew necessarily who he was playing with, but I'm sure, he tried to check out as much tangential housewife stuff as he could. Obviously, he has probably a bevy of Traitors backlog content that he could check out. I do have some worry that he could be too in his head about that. That it's like, so-and-so said this, but when I remember watching them on this show, I know they have a tell with this. And maybe he doesn't necessarily see the Scottish forest for the trees and pay attention to what he's directly observing in the moment, instead trying to compare it to what he has observed about that person before everything in the castle.
Yeah. One thing is for certain, he is the same person he was back then, in that I do not have a single doubt in my mind the man did his homework and did his homework thoroughly. Now, my hope is that if he did do his homework like that, Mike, like the let me predict who could be on, or let me like study up on these franchises that I'm not familiar with, I hope he went into it with the mentality, this is bonus studying. Like, oh, I have plenty of time before getting on that plane. Let me look through these things, and not so much this is now gospel that I have to follow. Because I think, Eric said this earlier, I think he's going to get there and going to have to chuck all that out the window immediately, because these are also like, you could, let's say, for example, like, let's run this exercise. Let's say that he was dipping into the Love Island of it all, and he did watch like snippets of Rob Roush. That was 2 years ago. That man was a nobody, and now is like a person who has more of an ego, more of a celebrity status. You can't predict that they're the same person.
I just need the image and the hopes Rob recorded his reaction to watching the Andrea boot just live, because that is incredible television. And I imagine Rob had an iconic reaction to it as well.
Yeah, now that would be phenomenal. And that's the thing, right? Is that I think that Rob Roush is an example. It's only been 2 years. A lot of these other people, like their big highlight reels are from years ago. People, we can all sit here and say that we have grown and changed from the people we once were. And I think that you can't follow that as a blueprint. You can use it as a guide. It's basically, the way I would put it, the analogy I would use is, it's like, okay, it's an iPhone, but that was an iPhone. You can't use the iPhone 4 manual to figure out your iPhone 12. Like, that's not going to work. Just being familiar with the ecosystem's not bad, but you cannot use it as a blueprint.
Well, we're his friends. We're busting his balls. We're making content right here. We're looking at the good, bad, and in between. And we are dissecting in the greatest, almost hilarious detail the way things could go right and could go wrong.
Mhm.
But the fact of the matter is, you either got it or you don't, and he has it.
Yes.
As much fun as I'm having picking apart the nuances and the inner workings and giving him a hard time with it, the fact of the matter is, if you're likable, if you know how to connect with people, if you know how to meet people where they at, if you are that social and strategic chameleon, he is head and shoulders beyond 85% of the cast in terms of strategy. Right? That's not even a question. He digests these scenarios and analyzes them in real time as his career. That is completely second nature to him. So he's going to come in and he's going to build bonds, and he is going to have friends and allies and room to operate, no matter how we want to pick him apart. So I actually am very much agreeing with you. I am in the camp that all the prep, it's there in the background, filed away. It maybe informs a specific situation or exactly how to not put your hand on the stove with a specific cast member. But ultimately, when there, what he's going to do is be himself. And
Yes.
he himself is an advanced player, a likable guy. And I mean this in the best way possible. He goes to live events and he has to talk to 1,000 people who are thrilled to be speaking to him. And he may know some of them intimately. He may not know any of them at all. I recently had the chance to come out to an event for the first time in a while, and he found time to speak to everyone and make everyone, not just make everyone feel welcome. He did welcome them. They were genuine conversations, and he found time for each and every person. And this, while fun and while an adventure and while a great memory, it is a business trip for him. And he's not going to go in there and rile people up and be an ass and do inflammatory things. That's just not who he is as a person. So
Yeah.
he's going to be in a good spot for sure. It's just, where does that spot take him? And does that create the spotlight you want or the spotlight you don't want in this specific game, which is very luck based? And also, the aspects that are not luck based are very much in the control of just a few individuals. So it really, you could have 17 people feeling great about you, and if one of 3 people don't, then that's all that matters.
So I think we are in kind of agreement that I don't think he'll have any issue forming new relationships in the castle. I think where the biggest issue lies is with the relationships he has coming into the castle with
Okay.
these fellow gamers, because I do think, and this is something that we talked about, it really is up in the air as to how threatening is the idea that this man has dedicated his life to dissecting reality television. This idea of, like, he knows the games. This is something that we talked about all the way back when the cast was released, that I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on, is like, what are the chances that a Natalie, that a Jam, who knows his game, who has been on the podcast, feels that he is too threatening to keep around? A Tiffany or an Ian especially, who has done so many things with Rob, I imagine will want to work with him to start. I think, honestly, the biggest perpetrators behind Rob, if he were to get banished from the show, would not be with the non-gamers. It would not be oh my God, this guy's too snaky, we got to go for him. The call would be coming from inside the house.
That was the exact expression I was just going to say. It also sends shivers down my spine because I hate it so much. They need each other in this game, right? But let's be real. Rob could have gotten endless draws that were better for him within the CBS community. These are people he knows. These are not his tightest friends. They are self-invested people. When the heat is on CBS early on, from past things totally out of their control, do they scatter? Right? Do they throw each other in the bus? And is he an easy target for that? Right? Because there's something very quickly to point to. You can easily see how they might approach the game. And I have that as a very legitimate worry and concern as well. That would be one of the very first things I would do if I was there and he was there. As soon as it was like, well, it's going to be one of us, well, just like Rob would do, it's not going to be me. So it's going to have to be somebody else. So let me look around. Okay, well, maybe I point out Ian is a world-class backgammon champion, or maybe I point out that Rob talks to all of these people, knows all these people, and loves reality TV. But I'm not going to just sit there and wait around for it to happen when the target is on CBS. So I think that this is a very, very concerning and damning point. And these are, I mean, Jam Jam just won a season of Survivor. Tiffany dominated a season of Big Brother. Ian and Natalie, both winners of the show. These are not nobodies, so we can talk about his strategy. This is Rob's preview episode, right? But these are formidable strategy experts, and we can't expect them to roll up over either, right? So they need each other, but when things go off the tracks, do they stay strong or do they scurry? And that's where it could get really dicey.
Yeah, because I think, we talk about a lot the meta of it all. One of the big concerns we have is that coming into this season, they're going to look at the gamers and be like, get them out of here, because about time someone picks up on the meta. And I think that's what the gamers always have the advantage of coming in. Because, we talk about some of these people being students and studying beforehand, Rob being one of them. I think there's being a student, and then there's also trying to predict what the professor would do, right? What the test is going to look like. If you're thinking, well, usually the professor puts a multiple choice for questions 1 through 8, and like they usually use the questions from like 3 years ago, not 4 years ago. So, and I think that's where the meta comes in. I think if you are one of these gamers, I genuinely do see someone being too concerned and worried that they're like, I got to feed them something. Let me throw out that Ian does this. Let me throw out that Rob does that. But I think, and I can't emphasize this enough, especially with the way this cast is built, these 5-6 people need each other, because if you are going to study the tapes, study last season's tape, the immediate previous season, where the gamers immediately pointed at each other and immediately go down a entire losing hole where you do end up with the Lord Ivar winning a chunk of change here. So they definitely do need each other. And I think that I've thought my positive spin was like, I think Rob is in a good spot amongst the 5, being one of the 2 non-winners and also being one of the most hasn't been on television more recently people. But I also think that if I am Jam Jam or Natalie and I am a winner of Survivor, I'm like, I'm not going to let Rob just quietly be invisible as a non-winner here. I'm going to let them know that he's got some accolades of his own if I need to. So that is also a concern of mine coming into this. But I think also if they're going to go off meta, the gamer specifically, and they are faithfuls, they should bond with each other, because I'm assuming if I'm a faithful, one of you is the traitor. So I got to keep nice.
Right. Well, something really weird about US traitors is that some of these people are legitimate household name celebrities, right? And they do not need this at all. They have ongoing TV shows, they have money, they have mansions. This is just literally pure nonsense for them. They are there to have a ball. They will not lose 1 minute of sleep over this, right? Then you have someone, say, like Brittany Haynes, who comes in. This is a regular civilian who needs money to care for her children. It's not, they are not apples to apples, right? So when you look at the cast and they're trying to sort of like gleam out like, well, who's doing what and why are they here and this and that, it really puts the whole thing in a very weird perspective, right? And so what is notable to us is not going to be notable to Lisa, right? Or Portia. They will not give one shit that this man has a podcast about reality TV shows. So like we are like blowing this up.
And to be fair, a lot of reality TV stars now have podcasts about reality TV shows.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the CBS people and worried about the infighting, but something else that immediately jumps out to me is, what if Monet comes in to settle the score for Bob the drag queen, right? They know reality. He beefed with the survivors last time around. And while you could say, oh, well, Monet might be one of the only people in the cast who has some familiarity with the CBS folks. But what if the familiarity is a negative in this case? And it's more of like I'm not going down that path again. I know what they're capable of. That's not great, right? And you have to look about, so who is going to care who they are? Who's going to care that they were on in one Big Brother? And what are they going to do about it? And then who from within the CBS group might be able to get in those players' good graces, right? So is Rob going to be someone who's going to be tight with Monet, or is that going to be Jam Jam? Or is that going to be Natalie? Or is that going to be someone else entirely? And so when I start looking at, and of course, I understand we are deeply in the weeds here. I mean, very, very much so. But that's how much I care about how this man is going to do and how much I have thought about this situation. And that's another area where I see one of the only other people who's really savvy to what's going on. Then, of course, the housewives come with numbers. We know full well the Traitors, Survivor, Big Brother, these are numbers games, right? It ultimately comes down to a majority vote to make things happen. So the housewives have numbers. If they make 3 friends, do they have an unbreakable amount of numbers? We have, Tara and Johnny. That is a airtight duo who will never, ever, ever turn on each other in this game. No chance whatsoever, right? So how do you square off against that? Because to our point, I mean, Rob could have been there with Tyson.
Yeah.
He could have literally been there with people who are his dear friend. He could have been there a year earlier with Danielle Reyes, someone that he looked up to from reality television. This is a little bit more of a mixed bag in terms of who he got in the CBS draw. And I don't really see that group staying together. I do see them as every man for themselves here. And it's just a question of who's able to scratch and claw their way out of it and latch on to the other relationships enough to survive it, I think.
I would agree with that he's not coming in with any bad blood. There really don't seem to be any sort of baked in pre-existing relationships like we saw last season, especially with Danielle and Brittany. But that works for and against him in this scenario. And that, it's great. There's not going to be anyone who has an immediate axe to grind against you or an agenda, like we saw with Danielle wanting to push against Carolyn consistently to bring Brittany in. On the other hand, it means that it is built with popsicle sticks, essentially, this structure. And so if it bends under the wrong amount of pressure, it could easily snap. I mean, if we're getting into some people who Rob could work with, I have flagged a few specific individuals. I actually think Rob and Monet could work really well together. I do see your point that I think Monet is incredibly savvy. I mean, I directly experienced how much of a Survivor fan she is, how cutthroat she can be. A month before she went out to play Traitors, I was hanging out with her in Fiji where she got to show how competitive she is. But I feel like Rob, and this is not an apples to oranges comparison, or I guess it is, but I look at the way that Rob regards Bryce Isaiah, who is this very large personality from the LGBTQ plus community. And Rob is not only so supportive, he's actively in on the joke, right? Bryce is put into stitches every single time that Rob uses lexicon or is just rolling with whatever chaotic energy they have. I think that, and this is not the Monet preview, my hunch is that when you have Monet, when you have Jam Jam, when you have Johnny, there might be an alliance there bred to the fact that they are part of a shared community, but it does feel like a lot of energies at once. And I think
that sounds like quite a conversation that you just laid out the 3 of them together. Oh, man.
Right. And so I think that's where, again, Rob's, I wouldn't say submissive, but his ability to, I think, make himself smaller in those dynamics could work really well, where I think he can no ball and talk a bit with Monet and endear himself in the way that he has to so many members of that community without necessarily coming across as oh, I'm super sharky. Monet doesn't really have a lot of knowledge of the podcast. Again, I know that firsthand. She has much more of a knowledge of the work that Natalie and Jam Jam have done than really anything Rob has done.
That's interesting. One person who immediately, first off the board, jumps out at me, Stephen Coletti.
Oh, interesting.
So this guy, we have no idea how he's coming into this. Is he a gamer? Does he know where he's at? Does he care one iota? Does he know any of these people? Is there a single person here that he has ever encountered in his actual day-to-day life? But I would go as far as to say, somewhere in the recesses of my mind, and I am going senile, so I really just don't know this, but I believe Rob and I may have many years ago been in a Johnny Fairplay fantasy football league that had at least Jason Weiler and I think, well, we know he podcasted with Spencer. We also, Spencer Pratt, we also know that did not necessarily go that well, but he has some loose ties into the Laguna Hills community. But also, Steven is like, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's a probably a 40-year-old guy. They could probably connect on sports, just very basic, normal stuff. But I don't see him coming in with a whole master plan. He was probably just happy to get the call, happy to be working. And I'm not saying that like in a derogatory way, but he might need some guidance. He might need someone to take him under his wing. And that looking at who else is there, who is Steven going to connect with? So forget who Rob is going to connect with, right? Who's he going to? Is he going to yuck it up with Tiffany? Is he going to be with Dorinda? Is that, I don't see that. So where is this man going? Rob R or Rob C? Those are pretty much the only two people I see him on that level with. So I could see this as a very good connection. There's nothing that ties them together. No reason to believe they'd be playing together. It should be totally non-threatening. If they're sitting around, very easy to pass it off as just like bullshitting with the boys. And I know that that's not the game that Rob played when we saw him the last time, but it is because it's someone to scoop up, right? It's finding those targets, those gaps in the board. You're not going to extract a housewife. Like that's not going to be what works for him here. So he has to look around and say, I need somebody and I need them fast, right? So who's that going to be? Who's going to be on night one, beer in hand, and we're going to be looking around for, I need this guy to vote with me. And so Steven is someone who I saw right away on that front.
And from that capacity, I'm going to call my shot and say that I think Rob will find his new best friend in this mansion, in this castle, and it is Ron Funches. I am making Rob Ron t-shirts and merchandise to come out when the inevitable thing happens, because these two guys are going to be the Statler and Waldorf of Traitors Season 4. Mark my words. They are both of a very similar mind where they can certainly be very laid back and just, giving snippy, witty commentary from the sidelines. I think that's a big reason why Ron Funches was cast in the first place, is to go to those confessionals. I think the two of them just have very similar energy. Again, like Rob can be very fun, very trolly, very aggressive, but he can be like, again, a little bit more of a soft-spoken one-liner mentality. That is what Ron Funches has to offer in spades. I just think these two will get along so well. I have no idea if it'll translate to a game relationship like you're saying, Eric, but like, I really think no matter where these two guys go, they're going to be thick as thieves by the end of this.
I could see that. My direction I'm going is we go back to the metagamer, back to the student. There ain't no way Rob is going to go into that manor, that castle, and not think I need to scoop a housewife up immediately. Now, which housewife? Couldn't tell you. No idea. But my assumption is Rob is going to try and cozy up with a housewife or two early doors, because I think, the next biggest group or the only other biggest group is usually the Housewives franchise. Not saying that they all know each other by any means or are familiar with each other to that degree, but that is the next big number that is there. And I think cozying up to the other bigger group is good, because in the event that a housewife or two goes early or a gamer or two goes early, Rob doesn't want to be the one that gets looked at or pointed at or retaliated against, I feel like.
But last season was a bit of a Housewives reckoning, right? This was Housewives Armageddon to start. I cannot see this happening again, right? Because first of all, the Traitors producers don't want that to happen, because that's what is making this the breakout hit that it is, that it's crossing over to different fan bases, right? So they do not want to wipe out the people that the viewers want to see right away. And also the housewives are not going to want that. So that is not what is going to happen this time around, right? So the question is there any infiltrating them, or is that even is it more about picking up everybody else, on the board? The people, I mean, I know if I'm there, right, I'm going to put myself into my shared brain matter with Rob again. I'm going after Mark. I'm going after Colton. I'm going after who, like the people that say that, like Mark could literally not know a single one of these people. Steven absolutely doesn't. Ron absolutely doesn't. Eric absolutely doesn't. I would be, putting together the jankiest team, Timu Avengers that you could ever possibly get. The worst squad, the Ivars. That's exactly what I would be doing, because everything else is too obvious or too protected. And then, of course, there's the Donna Kelsey in the room, which I think, unfortunately, looms very large over the season. And we saw this once before to an even lesser extent with my fellow mastermind, Frankie Grande, and his sister. Once that was out of the bag, and they didn't even know who she was, and she wasn't even the star that she is now. And it basically became that he was an untouchable player at that point. It's like, we are not getting on the wrong side. I want my backstage tickets. I want to be at a party where I may accidentally bump shoulders with her, or whatever the case may be. And in the meta of the metagaming, you do not want the Swifties against you. You do not want the Chiefs fans against you. And, if you go after Kristen, I don't think that like people are coming after you with pitchforks. They might not, the Top Chef fans might not be thrilled, but like everyone will move on. They're not that invested. Donna's fans might be that invested, or Donna's fans by proxy, not really Donna fans. So she is somebody who, just write her down for the final six. She is not leaving this castle until somewhere at the very, very end. So what does Rob do with that information? My concern is everyone has the exact same read, right?
Yeah.
So then then it actually almost inadvertently becomes her choice, right? Does she become the shot caller of this entire game? Because she's not going anywhere and everyone wants to be in her good graces, right? So does she hand select who she wants to drag along? I know that this is an absurd notion to you, Mike, but is it a possibility that we're about to see Donna Kelsey mob boss kingpin here?
I mean, forget Traitor Angels. What about Taylor Angels here? Everyone wants to be able to get protected, whether she is actually traitorous or not, because yeah, well, they have immunity not only through the game, but through the virulent army of Swifties that'll surely be responding in the comments all season long.
I mean, this was one of my early predictions, and I still feel comfortable with it. Donna Kelsey's going to be in the turret. I feel like you are not bringing her in to be a quiet episode 3 murder in the night. I think she's one of the ones in the turret. And so I genuinely do see both the idea that she's in the final 6 and or also her being a shot caller early. The thing is, though, no matter who you are, that starts to wear off a little bit with the Traitors by the time you get to like the 3rd or 4th round table. So if she's running a lot of it and they're getting it wrong, I could see her eventually getting booted by somebody. I could see them getting fed up. But in the beginning, I think she is the person everyone should 100% be trying to bond with.
I feel like, to go back to your earlier question, Pooya, of like, and I have very remedial knowledge of the Housewives, but like, who would be someone that he could cozy up to? I think he would seek the biggest personalities, partially because it is something to kind of hide behind, and also because I do think it's a little bit of like Rob wanting to have fun. And you could see, again, his face light up when he gets to talk with some of the ridiculous reality TV personalities that he's gotten to over the past decade and a half. So I could see like Rob and Lisa Rinna happening. I think that could be incredible TV of Rob just letting Lisa talk to him about whatever. And he is just completely yes-anding everything, whether like trolling her behind her back or to her face. I could see him and Dorinda as well too, could bond over tri-state area drama and the like. So there is a possibility that he could be recruited to their side as well. But I think, Eric, you bring up a good point about, could we see Rob do something similar to what he did in the final 7 of Amazon, which is, hey, here's this block of people that I'm kind of associated with. Let me try to gather up all the loose ends and tie up sort of an opposition to get what I want at the end of the day.
Also, do you want to play the game with people who care or people who don't care? That's sort of an interesting thing from Rob's point of view, because here you have some people who are in it for the laughs, and some people who are competitive by nature. Some people we have not really discussed vis-a-vis how they relate to Rob would be Kristen, Tara, Johnny, who are cutthroat competitors. You're not an Olympian, you're not a Top Chef champion if you are not a competitive person. So those are going to be people that, although they're not from the strategist realm, are there to play. Does he recognize game, and he picks them up as people who might be movers and shakers? Or is he wary of them? Is he better off dragging the Stevens or the Erics, who maybe have literally no idea where they even are? Which I think, and Pooya, you could speak to this a lot better than I can. I think every season there has been the 3 or 4 people who look like they're in a haze, like they just literally can't even fathom what is going on around them. So do we see Rob as wanting to capitalize on that, or does he need people to match the energy of wanting to get invested in the game structure?
I think the latter, because I think the former is a sweet treat and a good idea. But I think if I'm Rob, the last thing I want is for someone who has no idea what's going on to act holier than thou and push me out of the game. If I am taken out by the hands of a champion of any sport or any game, I can live with that. But if a Lord Ivar equivalent is the one that not only banishes me,
through the mud.
Listen, at this point, to me, as someone who's gotten flack from a contestant before, Lord Ivar is the safest pick because that man does not know this exists.
No, he's in the comments. He's gonna be like, you.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and a chap named Pooya was rather fresh about me.
Sam told me that I needed to check out this guy talking mad crap on us.
Oh God, yeah, we're gonna spoil his tea for sure. But yeah, to the equivalent of that person in the castle, the last thing I would want is for that person to tap dance on my grave and also have like the final words at a banishment. So I think that it is a fun exercise to have those people. And I do think the Steven thing, that's an eye opener to me, Eric, because I'd never even factored that in, that I could see Steven being the person Rob says, hey, get in the passenger seat. We can have some, let me show you the ropes. But I think that a lot of these pickups, the worry would be, are they absolutely controllable pickups, or are they pickups in the beginning and then they're going to wake up and push you out of the car? Because I think that's the last thing you want, is for that person to get you.
What are the chances that Rob, for the bit, either works closely with or closely against Rob Roush? From the moment this cast was leaked, we were all laughing about the fact that why can't Rob be the only Rob on his season twice now? Is there going to be an instant connection with Love Island Rob, or do you think there's only room for one Robert in this castle?
I don't like this storyline that you are cultivating because it rings too true, right? We have the Rob who sucks, the Boston Rob. This has followed our poor friend for so long. What if it happens again? What if he is showed up by another Rob? What if we talk about Rob's season of the Traitors and it's Rob R's season of the Traitors and not Rob's season of the Traitors? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like that they're both similar. They're probably both cracking jokes. They probably have a similar space inside of this structure. I curse you for even putting this out into the universe. I don't want to hear it. They're going to be best friends. But truthfully, so I know that I'm a personality type that people tend to either really like me or really dislike me. I'm a bit more polarizing in that way. People are rarely just indifferent. So if I look at who might Rob irritate on this cast, or who might be sort of jockeying for the same things or positions or oppositional to him. And I do not have a lot of personal familiarity with him, but just looking at the types, I am concerned that other Rob might be someone who is opposed to him in this game.
My question then becomes, will other Rob have the motion, though, to bring people in? Because I don't really know. He's a very hard one to read, because I do think that, having watched the season, one thing that was for certain is that the charisma is there. He has a charm about him. That is for sure. But is he motivated to like really give this game a go? Or is he going to be like the second in command in someone else's crew?
Right.
Because we had in season 2, we had the Peter pals, Peter at the forefront. Is he a Peter, or is he the guy from
Bergie?
Yeah, or is he a Bergie? Which actually, no, Bergie was like beloved though. Like the cast yearned for Bergie. Like they loved that man. Okay,
Not my
Like,
Bergalicious.
yeah, they really love. So I don't know if they're gonna be loving Rob the same way, but also are we gonna see a different Rob to the Rob? I mean, even the Rob in Love Island, yeah, the audience may have been annoyed with the man, but like he was loved on the island. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting conversation to have. I think comes down to how motivated is he to really give it a go.
I think we've talked a bit generally about like how the other gamers might be able to utilize him or not so much. I mean, I think the biggest relationship that Rob can bank on is Ian, considering that Ian was such a big part of RHAP for so long. Eric, you sat alongside the two of them playing Risk together over a decade ago. Obviously, Ian has been away from reality TV, and especially away from like just the general stream of reality TV discourse for a while. But do we think that like it'll just be like old times with the two of them back together? It's like, because I would imagine, especially from Ian's perspective, he might need Rob, considering how, again, out on an island he's kind of been, even within the gamer community.
Ian is really an interesting wrinkle in Rob's potential game. I do not perceive them as being super close friends, but obviously they know each other well on a very good terms working relationship from years ago. They have encountered each other, talked on the podcast many, many times. Ian is a masterful strategist, and he's not looked as such because of the way that season 14 of Big Brother ended, and some people thinking that was Dan's game. But Ian did all of those things by intention. He made himself the little brother. He thought that it might be a bitter jury. This was not someone who was just along for the ride and had the good fortune fall upon him. As I briefly mentioned earlier, he is a world-class backgammon player. I'm not talking about someone who does this as a casual hobby. He is an elite mind for these type of things. However, Ian is not the extroverted social guy that Rob is, right? So Rob's relationship building is going to be totally essential to Ian. And then the question is, does Rob feel like that is a value add to his game, or does he feel like he's sort of hurting himself by potentially bringing Ian along for the ride in this game? Because I do think Ian would need to piggyback on Rob's relationships. I really have a hard time seeing a world in which the speed of this game, where Ian is jumping out and making those connections, Rob is his safe place here, right? So he's going to be the first person he sits next to at a breakfast. It's just, what does Rob want to do with that? And how much do you feel this is something you have to consider on these types of shows? How much do your personal feelings come into play versus your game? If he is reading that Ian might be an anchor to his game, does he still feel the need or desire to protect him? Or does he cut ties and move on?
I do think that they're both going to see each other as each other's constants in this castle specifically. Because while we're looking at this cast, there's not really any, like, to me, they're easily while neither of them have any like strong connections here, they're easily each other's strongest.
Yeah.
And I think a quick check-in temp check is gonna be there. I think that as far as Ian goes, his journey is going to be very interesting to me because weirdly enough, Mike, there is a bit of a similar trajectory to the Rob side of it all. Granted, Big Brother 14 to Big Brother All Stars, aka season 22, is a bigger gap than the 6 to 8 that Rob had, but similar in result a little bit, where Ian doesn't get the traction that he's looking for and does get exited out somewhat middle of the game ish.
Yeah, but never really having any power, right? He was more so like other more threatening, pervading people were taken out, but it was, as much as things kind of turned in a very specific way to have Ian become the number one target of the week, there wasn't really anyone protecting him to bring him to the end, much like we saw with Rob Cesternino.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think they're gonna be good with each other, at least at the very start. And I think that they both do need each other in there to a certain degree. I do not see Rob going all out to defend Ian if Ian is seen as suspect. I don't think Rob's gonna end up. I think Rob recognizes to not do that for just about anybody if he can help it. But I think I could see them working simpatico at the very least at the beginning, whilst they, figure stuff out. And specifically in Rob's case, whilst Rob starts making these bonds that are not there yet. It's kind of like, the whole thing of like when you are away from home, having that little bit that can still tie you back to home can help refresh you, recharge you, re-energize you.
You can look at him and see home.
Exactly. That's his home right there, is Ian. Just in the sea of unknowns, having a couple of people that you are familiar with can allow you to reset and get back into the game when you need to.
And if these two get jamming together, let alone if they get a Tiffany or Natalie in the mix with them or whatever, their strategic acumen is off the charts, right?
Yeah.
So it's just about, it's just about appearances and what do you want it to be known that you know this man, that you're friends with this man within the community. It's such an interesting community dynamic with these pre-existing sort of reputations and relationships. And like I was saying before, every single person there knows exactly who Lisa is. I would wager that it's possible that literally no one other than Rob knows who Ian is. So I think that maybe Tiffany knows who he is, but
I would hope so.
I honestly, I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? It's so interesting because like your reputation and relationships are what you make of it. But in reality TV, especially a game like this, perception is reality, right? So I just think that more the point I was getting at is that not that Ian would ever be a detriment to Rob's game. He's a great player, and I think they're on great terms. It's more about, do they want that to be known? And when it gets a little hot for one of them, are they in it for the long haul and going down with the ship together? Or are they immediately saying like, I'm sorry, this did not work out for you, my friend. I'll see you on the other side.
All right. We have two Survivor players that Rob is with, Natalie and Jam Jam. If you have to pick one that is most likely to be his friend by the end of his journey and one who is most likely to be his foe, who are you assigning what to?
It's very difficult if we have to declare one as foe because I just don't see it.
So you think you don't think there's a chance that we're going to have like Survivor on Survivor violence going on here?
I mean, in the game, perhaps, but I think all three of them seem to be like folks that are not going to carry it after the fact. That being said, this is a very complicated question because Mike, and I believe you were in the same room with me. We got to go to a Survivor 45 episode, like, sneak peek before everybody else released thing in New York a couple of years ago. And these three were in the same room that day. So it is kind of surreal to talk about it. It's tough because I do think that I want to say Rob had a relationship with Natalie a lot longer. And more of a relationship as in more of a back and forth back in the day. I don't know how much they talk like more recent times, but then Rob's been tapped in with the new era very, a lot. And like, I believe Jam Jam, as recently as before they filmed this, was like on a recap with him.
Yeah, there could be some fun revenge from Jam Jam of like, you told me not to look at the chat. Now I'm sending you to chat forever.
I have a tough time seeing Natalie going after Rob. I just don't see what's the benefit of that for her, even if they're not even on the same side of the playing board. Like, still protect each other from the other side, then just leave each other alone. There's no reason to instigate anyone who wants you there or is indifferent towards you whatsoever. I do see Jam Jam, he is traveled a lot since his season of Survivor. He's been at events a lot. I know they have crossed paths. I know they have gotten along. So I could see that as being an absolute net positive. I do consider Jam Jam to be a pretty self-interested player, who is definitely one of the people who jumped to mind as somebody who, if it's a sinking ship, he's jumping off board. He's not going down with the ship. So I don't know enough about him on a personal level or their relationship to weigh in super intelligently. But for me, if I was on this type of show and I was on with anybody who was on my show from years ago, in my opinion, we're automatically friends. Even if this is someone that on a Big Brother All-Stars I wouldn't play with, or at a bar I wouldn't be excited to see. Here, there's safety in numbers, right? So it just, Natalie is way too game savvy and way too smart to go after Rob for no reason. There's no advantage to her. I think the more likely scenario is that they end up in a situation where it's sort of one or the other, and they have to just decide to either let the group sort it out or then are forced to turn on each other, like for self-preservation. I just don't see like their mission statement being, I'm going to come in here and get Rob out of the game. That does not make sense to me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I think Natalie's playbook, what she did so well in San Juan del Sur, was the marinating, which is a classic tactic in these types of social strategy games, Pooya, as you know, of like, her blindside of John Mish was paid off so effectively because she bided her time. She was not immediately saying, I need revenge, I'm going to gun for you. Again, this is not the Natalie Anderson preview. It's something that's directly applicable to this game. But I don't think she would marinate Rob. That doesn't feel like the type of person that she's like, I'm going to slowly make you feel like I'm your friend, only to realize at the last minute that I'm your enemy. Again, I think the way that Rob is probably going to be perceived in this turret, and especially from Natalie, who I imagine is not like hugely tuned in to all the stuff he's been doing. I just checked in the archives. I think the last time she was on was like, she did a Love Know-It-Alls back in 2018, but otherwise she really hasn't done a lot of stuff directly with the podcast. I think she's going to see a friendly face, and I think she's going to be relatively unassuming about him, as opposed to someone like Jam Jam, who I think obviously knows what he's capable of from a game perspective, but much more pertinently knows what he's capable of from a content perspective, and knows what he's capable, what his brain is capable of doing, where he would be the much more likely person, I agree, to, if his back is against the wall, just take Rob and chuck him under there and say, oh, you don't realize that he's talked about you and you and you and you before on Traitor seasons.
And Natalie's a bit of like a bro herself also. Like, I could see her in that Rob and Steven side of things. She's a gym rat. She like, no, I'm saying she's just chill. She's cool. She's gonna like be able to hang with them. Like, I really see them as clicking in this game. Also, if you're gonna look at it in terms of this way, if I'm not gonna win, I would still rather someone representing my show win. There is a little bit of show pride on the line here, right? And we had right, the challenge has had a win here, the Bachelor has had a win here, right? So and of course Survivor has as well, but I'm just saying, you if you're looking at it that way, it's like, well, all things considered equal, if Rob's not going to win, I'm sure he would prefer Natalie or Jam Jam to win than some random, than Lord Arthur. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Mike brought this up. The last Traitors US podcast Rob did before going on this show, he talked about how if he was ever given the chance to be on the show, he would be pushing out the Lord Ivars, the Quiets, the Borings. And to me, that doesn't say, that says the most things it says is this: if anyone's being a dullard, he's not going to like that. And if anyone he is associated with, and most of these people he's associated with are personalities, he's not going to want them out. So I do see him trying to work with them. What gets interesting is he going to back that, right? Is he going to then day one be like, nah, you know what? This person's been quiet for 2 days. We need to get rid of him.
Yeah, is this for real? Because this honestly sounds like pandering to the podcast listeners than something that he would really do. I mean, because you can't come in and be like, yo, we got to get the lamos out of here. That's like bullying. And I just don't really see him doing that. Also, God forbid, what if he is one of the lamos? You know, what if you're saying, they're like, you know what? You're right. We want this to be the highest.
Or he becomes like the
who are you?
He's the default lame, right? He gets rid of all the boring people. It's like, oh well, Rob's actually the most down to earth of all of us. Shouldn't we just get rid of him then? Should we use his own strategy against him?
I'm the host of a Bravo show. I've been on 15 seasons of a Bravo show. I was the Bachelor. Who are you, mister? That's right. Let's keep the big TV names and get you out of here. You know, I think that is not an approach I would actively take. How do you even frame that inside of the castle? Like, hey, listen, we're going to have to go get rid of so-and-so because they suck. Like how can you even do that? You know, I really think that I get it. And that's probably how he feels in his heart of hearts and in his ideal world. I think that's a tough sell when you're actually there.
It makes more sense if it's more of an individual game, right? Because something that could allow you to push out these people is the classic argument of, if we don't get rid of them now, they're going to be sitting in the final 4, final 5, and that's going to rob you of your chance of winning. But again, because it can essentially be a group project at the very end, at the fires, it doesn't exactly disincentivize people to get rid of the boring individuals. You just really would have to spin a hell of a yarn about Eric Nam's been looking really quiet at the table. Has he spoken with anybody? What secrets lie in those luscious locks of his?
But also, if you were using this, applying this logic, right? Wouldn't you actually want the boring people who are not going to be getting any screen time coming with you? Because then that guarantees you are the star of the show if you are still there, right? Early on, you could say, I want to make the best show possible. But if you're there with all of the other biggest characters, then you could fade into the background. I mean, look at Rob's edit on Survivor All-Stars. This guy was an enormous presence, an enormous confessionalist on the Amazon. And on All-Stars, he was really a background character. And I'm sure that eats away at him. I mean, he brings it up to this day about it. And that's not how he perceives themselves. And it's not how he should perceive himself. So I wonder, this is something that has kind of come up a lot today, is does he perceive himself to be a main character of this season of the show, or is he okay to ride in the background a little bit to help his game?
I feel like priority number 1 is to not look a fool. Priority number 2 is to be a star of the show. That's really what I think is happening or will be happening. And I think that my feelings has been that my pulse check on Rob is that Rob leaves wanting to be a faithful, which then automatically means you are not a star of a show. You have to earn that spot because the Traitors automatically are the stars of the show to kick things off. So you really have to earn that spot. In order to do so, you have to, go to work, essentially.
So that's obviously a question that comes up in every single one of these previews, right? So are we all in that same frame of mind? I personally would bet my life that Rob is going to be a faithful. And my reasons are more from a producing reason than from a chops reason, right? There's only so many times you can go back to the CBS well before A, it becomes too predictable, and B, it becomes alienating to the audience, right? This is on Peacock. They want the Bravo audience for sure. Those are some of their biggest names for sure. And you want the Traitors are the main characters of the show, right? The show is called The Traitors. It's not called The Faithful. There are 3 or 4 of them. There is not 17 of them, right? And so I think eventually, from a producing standpoint, you have to position a group of people that you are guaranteeing are going to be central to the action of your show. And you can't tell the same story 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons in a row. So I think we're getting the shakeup this season, which in my opinion slots him in as a faithful. And I'm curious if you guys see that the same way, and then see how you feel that going for him, because as his gameplay, I think all of us, we would want to play as a traitor. It's conducive to being a traitor, but if it's so obvious that you're a traitor, it kind of neuters your ability to be a traitor. So, I mean, do you see him purely down the faithful lane? And if so, how do you see that playing out?
So first off, go ahead, Pooya.
So I want to co-sign that I also see him being a faithful, and the reason why I want him to be a faithful is because I think that it's going to be a huge sigh of relief for Rob to be a faithful and to build his game with that in mind. And then I think he would be very happy to get pulled into a traitor turret, of course. But at that point, he's, it's like you've lived that life long enough that now you can live it as a lie and be fine because you're used to it. I have watched Rob play Mafia. I've watched Rob play Brawl on the Clock Tower. When Rob's bad, he can't hide it, and especially if he gets accused, it's done. So it's curtains. So I really hope he doesn't start off as a traitor. But I do think if he is a faithful, I think that's going to set his mind right. We talked a lot earlier about if he's going to overthink or do a lot or come in with a lot of things that have to go a certain way. I think the sigh of relief he'll feel when he's a faithful will just kickstart the game that he would want to play.
Yeah, make it 3 for 3. I think that we want a comfortable Rob, right? Like a comfortable Rob is not only a Rob that we are satisfied with as his friends who care about his well-being, but also for content. Because when Rob is comfortable, again, look at Survivor the Amazon. When he was in a position of power, he was creating so much great stuff. And I think if you have a little bit more of an anxious, flighty Rob, he might not feel the need to do that. And Rob will also then be able to bank on some of his skills of like observing human behavior, of being able to pick up on these smaller things when he doesn't have another agenda, another track running on his mind of like, oh no, but I also have to keep up the guys that I'm a faithful. I will say I completely agree with you, Eric, that from a production perspective, there is no way he's in the turret to start. Because I think you talk about the CBS reality invoice, but even just looking at who they picked, right? Season 1, it was Suri and Cody, who were 2 of the biggest reality stars there out of a half newbie, half veteran cast. Season 2, Dan, Phaedra, eventually Parvati, all massive names in their respective spheres. Season 3, you have Bob the Drag Queen, you have Carolyn, you have Danielle. Carolyn, probably the least renowned name, but still a massive character that they knew they wanted to put in that turret. And then with the Cage Boys, they knew they were going to get gold with one of either Boston Rob, Wes, or Derek. And then here, again, I really feel like Traitors producers go for the low-hanging fruit. They go for the biggest names. I will be so forward as to say I think the Traitors this season, at least to start, will be like Dorinda, Donna, and Johnny Weir. I think that could be a very likely starting trio. And so I just don't think, and we say this with love for Rob and the renowned esteem he has brought to our community, I do not think that renowned esteem carries over into the larger Traitors audience to give the producers incentive to be like, that's a guy we got to put in the turret day one.
Right.
Ditto Ian, ditto Natalie, ditto Jam. I mean, it's straight on down the line, right? And I mean, Tiffany would be so amazing in that capacity, but I think everything you said is exactly right. I think you might have hit the 3 on the nose potentially, with Lisa being the only other, like, very or maybe you were including her, right? It's going to be the big names, right? So
Right.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think you guys know the Traitors inside and out, and I'm curious how Rob should approach a faithful game, right? One of the real catch-22s I always see here is if you're a mess and you're sending them on wild goose chases and you're totally off base and you're asserting your point of view, that gets you tossed in the round tables, right? If you are actually correct and hot on the Traitors trail, that gets you killed. If you don't say anything, that makes you suspicious. So what is the way to play this when you're someone who is armed with all of this knowledge? What do you do to survive?
I think The number one thing is recognizing that you can't play the out in the open, I'm gonna call my spots, because if they're wrong, they will punish you. They just will. They always do. I think the best way is to funnel it into a person who's going to be the loudspeaker, right? And do it in a way where it doesn't necessarily come back to you and you're not egging them on. It's more of a suggestion, or you're kind of feeding into their, you kind of say the word, they run with it, and you kind of feed more into that idea and make it seem like it's theirs. And I think Rob would be very good in that role. I think the thing that helps is that, because we keep talking about Rob and we're trying to meta Rob, which is the wildest thing here. But we're trying to figure out what kind of player he is, what are his motivations. If his motivation is good TV and memorable, I think what helps is that I think Rob recognizes the confessional room as a place to be memorable. I think some people make the error of thinking that they have to be memorable when all eyes from the cast are on them, not realizing that as long as all eyes are on you on the show, you're fine. So as long as Rob gets to have his energy released in through the confessionals, I think being in the shadows and like whispering into, hey, Stephen Coletti, you want your moment in the sun? How about this guy? What do we think about him? Should we go after him? And just let other people do all the legwork after that, be the mouthpieces after that.
What do you think, Pooya, about the trinkets that are involved in the Traitors increasingly so? The things like shields, the seer power. It's always a double-edged sword, ironically enough, for a shield, because if you're going for them, does it mean like, okay, do you feel like you're in danger? Why do you think you're in danger? Or like, if you're not going for them, do you feel comfortable about it? This came up a lot during that initial boat challenge in season 3. If Rob is a faithful, do you feel like he should be going for these forms of safety, or should he be trying to lie in the back pocket to be a little more obscured?
I think there's nothing wrong with wanting a shield. At the end of the day, it is, as outside of being a traitor, is the only way to guarantee a good night's sleep, like a stress-free sleep. I think what you shouldn't do is be the poster child for, hey, Shields McGee over here wants all the shields. You don't want to be that person, right? I feel like Tony kind of falls into that person in the previous season. So as long as you're vying for a shield, but you're not seen as the greedy shield person, I think you're fine. There are, depending on what kind of mission they have, though, if it's a very public facing shield where you have to get it and then take it away from somebody else, I would avoid all that altogether, because that almost will be more punishing than anything. But if there's there's 5 shields out there, yeah, go for it. Why not? Just don't piss anybody off.
Well, on a more obscure but fellow network show in Deal or No Deal Island, we saw former traitor Parvati basically have immunity almost the entire show.
Yeah.
And that let her cook, right? That she was able to settle in a way and then feel that relief. And I do think that especially early on, just getting his footing, just that sigh of, okay, I was not killed. I have a little room and time and place to operate here is a big deal. So if I'm him, I would be, especially if it's like half the cast has one in those first, 1 or 2, and you can do it sort of nonchalantly without causing major attention to yourself and without being considered greedy. I think you got to go for it because I think that it gives you room to operate, right? I just think that's really key here. I think if you start off like on your heels and you're forced into backpedaling and scrambling right away, I think it's really detrimental to your game here. I think, of the gamer types who were the faithful, I think we saw Sandra do it really, really well, where she was able to settle in and build her numbers organically. And someone who theoretically, if we were the ones analyzing it, we would have had her threat level at 10 million when she showed up there and was able to bring the temperature way down on herself. So I think let's give Rob 4 or 5 days. And I think he's starting to really feel himself a little bit, get the ideas working, starting to make those moves. And to your earlier point, Mike, starting to make better TV. I mean, I could say this from my own personal experience. The weeks I knew I was safe, I had an ally in power and I had 7 days to relax. This is going to sound absurd. I made way better TV because I was comfortable in the confessional. I was thinking about 2 weeks down the road, 3 weeks down the road, and I knew that it wasn't my life on the line based on everything I said or did. So it relieves the tension, right? So I think that if we want what is the best case scenario for him, he comes in, he gets a shield once or twice in the early going, and then to what he did in the Amazon, other people are fighting right over his head. He's pitting them against them. He's starting to grab the numbers and really gets a chance to settle in. The opposite of that is the all-star scenario where you never had a chance in the first place, right? And that's what not having a shield can do for a faithful. So I'm squarely in the camp of go after him, just don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah, and I think even when we get to a challenge like we saw in the church last season where they had to like pick the people that they want to give shields to, I think he is astute enough at least to again be able to read the room, to not only know when he needs it versus when he doesn't, but to also clock how people are reacting. I mean, in theory, that was one of Danielle's big red flags, was the behavior that she was using in that challenge. So I think he also, I think, probably sees, and this is where, again, the meta knowledge comes in handy, is that I think he knows what challenges are prime opportunities to be able to suss out who traitors might be as a faithful. Now, granted, I'm very intrigued to see how people who are the traitors this season have adjusted to just, let's just call it out, the bumblefuck tactics of the traitors in season 3. You know, whether they'll be more adept to it or whether it's just a really tough job to do, and they'll also make similar mistakes, if not new ones.
Yeah, I mean, you never know until you see what that makeup of that turret is. But I think historically now, whether you're just watching the US or you're watching all the English seasons or just generally, I think the move is very crystal clear. You want to stick together as traitors in the beginning, because all you're going to do is give the faithfuls ammo to figure you out if you turn on each other too early. But if the turret does look similar to what you proposed, Mike, which I do think you have the cosign of both me and Eric, in that it is like a Dorinda, Donna, and do you say Johnny?
Yeah, I say Johnny because I feel like we need that storyline, right?
Johnny
of like one's a traitor and one's a faithful.
Winter Olympics plug, Taylor Swift plug, and we do not want the housewives to go out early again is a very good reasoning from the producers to make these 3 happen. Now, if they do that, I could see that turret working together, because I don't think you're going to get confessionals from Donna Kelsey being like, well, I don't trust the housewives. They are menacing. I need to tell everybody. I need to make sure Dorinda goes out early. I don't think there's any reason to do that. I think they will see it as a team sport and they will work like that, at least at the beginning. The problem is with our lovely gamers, and I love them all to death, not specifically talking about this cast, but, cast pass, is that they do come from shows that are individually serving. You are told in that game, it's all about you outlasting people. There is only one winner at the end of this. There's one big check and one name goes on it. So you are actively thinking, all right, 3 steps ahead means, how do I get rid of Boston Rob down the line? Not so much, how do I get to final 6 and then kick Boston Rob out, which is probably what makes the most sense there. So depending on the makeup, I do see those wrongs being corrected. But at the same time, we could just as easily see one wrong decision. Someone in the turret does throw out a housewife's name as a suspicion. We saw Phaedra not liking that before. It could happen again where someone like Dorinda is like, why are you bringing up any housewives, period? Like, I don't like that. And they go after each other anyway. I think the lessons to be learned, this is one of them. Whether that's this season's lesson to be learned or we have to look at season 5 and hope they figured it out is yet to be seen.
Well, let's imagine that it's some sort of trio like this, right? What in the world would our beloved, lovely Rob do to these people to raise their ire, to have him be killed? He's not that dumb. He will not. What's he going to do? He's not going to go agitate them. He's not going to go and start dropping the names of other housewives. He knows for a fact that one of the housewives is going to be a traitor. So you're not going to go around the house go, oh, we should kill all the housewives. That's completely moronic. Like, the thing is, this podcast has turned into like a really like strategy forward, what if, but let's not forget, like, he is excellent at these things. He is not going to shoot himself in the foot in that way. So I think that scenario where they're all working together it could take a while before they get to Rob on the list. What is he doing to incite them in any which way, unless all of the gamers are just grouped together and they're totally like basically non-distinct from each other, as in they're just say, let's just kill all of them or any of them. It really doesn't matter. Whoever, is easy to pile on that day, let's just get rid of him. And it's nothing that he personally is doing to get attacked. Even still, though, I think that probably is more likely to fall on Jam, who's a bigger personality, or Ian, who is obviously like an outward math nerd. Like, that is in his bones, So I think that if I'm going to just say we got to start picking off some of these people, it's not going to be Rob. I really, now I'm starting to actually question this entire narrative that we have cooked up about the podcast and whatever. Like, is anyone really going to care? I think we just care. It's almost like your own algorithm on social.
Yep.
We're clicking the same shit over and over again. And it's like a self-fulfilling world where, because we're living in the bubble, we care. But if we actually just stepped 1 foot outside of our own algorithm, do any of these people, does Johnny Weir care that Rob talks about Survivor on a podcast? Absolutely not.
No, it's a very good point that I think, and this is why also people lie about their jobs on reality TV, is they do well, if I were that person, I would care if I was in this role. And like, people are incredibly different. And that is something that you very much need to weigh if you are a satisfactory, at least, player in these types of things. So it's a very good point. Not to mention, you talk about Donna Kelsey, like, her children and in-laws are hosting some of the most successful podcasts in the world. If she says, oh yeah, he's a famous podcaster, she goes, get in line.
Right. It's also like, I'm an Olympian. You have a podcast. Like, and listen, this is like a big part of all of our livelihoods. I am not poo-pooing that as a thing. I'm just saying, in their own mind, they're heroes of their own narratives, and rightfully so. It's so funny. We have not mentioned this name once on this podcast. I think we all know he is not long for the show, but like, regardless of how you feel about him personally, Michael Rappaport has starred on TV shows, like real scripted TV shows. These, I don't think that these people are going to be as awestruck about this as maybe we're concerned.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the reality is podcasts, Rob was one of the first ones to really make it a platform that was strong enough that like really was something he built from the ground up. Everyone has a podcast now. Like, and I think, the lockdown COVID definitely added more podcasts than even were there before. Now you have celebrities who have had, at least 1 or 2 podcasts under their belt. How many casts of shows from the 90s, the aughts, have now started a podcast where they're recapping their own show that they were once on. So I think it's less of a thing that people may imagine. And I think that really the only thing that could happen is if for this season, the gamer thing becomes a big conversation and Rob is put there as the poster of, well, he is the leader of the gamers. He literally talks about this. That is the only way I see that biting him. But that was a very specific scenario where the narrative of this season is we are looking at the gamers and it's the gamers massacre. Aside from that, I think that he'll be fine.
I mean, on the flip side, which is something we have never even considered, it doesn't seem super likely, but if you go all the way back to Big Brother All-Stars, Mike Boogie, another name I wish I didn't have to speak out of my mouth, but he promised a lot of things to people based on where he was at that point in his life, in his career. And I do say at that point, is not in that place anymore, but he was offering people jobs.
He has to repay multiple debts, both financially and to people who he said, hey, come into Dolce anytime and ask for me if you give me your vote.
That's right. I mean, he's given out bottle service left and right and jobs and so on and so forth. But it actually worked because reality stars are desperate for their 16th minute or their next opportunity or to up their cool factor ever so slightly and to walk into some of LA's hottest clubs, right? Is there any world in which we workshop the idea that Rob actually uses the podcast platform as a plus? Is he offering out hosting jobs to people? Is he saying, hey, we're going to have the biggest Traitors podcast out there for the next 10 seasons while this runs? Is there
You're going to be on American Airlines?
You could be on American Airlines. Hey, right. Is there any world in which this is actually an opportunity for any of the other cast members? The man is a business mogul. He runs an empire. He knows how it's done. Is there any way that he actually leverages it? Or do you think he just completely tries to sweep it under the rug entirely?
I don't think it depends on how Rob sees it, right? Does Rob walk into this be like, they don't know I have a whole empire here, I'm gonna put them onto it? I don't think he's looking at it like that. I think Rob, to a certain degree, is very much the person who still doesn't call it out as an empire, right? Doesn't see it as an empire. I think both in ways that's great because you're always looking to, it's all about growth. You're trying to grow it. But I think in other ways, I think it's just the way Rob looks at it. And he's like, at the end of the day, this did for a long time feel and operate like a little mom and pop shop over on the internet, where it is for a niche audience. I think we can speak on this in the last handful of years. I have seen the impacts of this podcast grow and grow and grow to the point where it is being referenced on a show or two, where, we are seeing more people watch this. More of casts of these shows now will watch and look out for the podcast to see what's being said. Like, we have really come a long way.
Shout
but
out
I think
Sam.
Rob, my guy, my dog, I claim him. Sam Asghari, what's up? So now
Pooya called me a dog the other day.
I really hope he doesn't bring me up ever again. I just still can't believe that has happened. But I don't think Rob sees it as that. I don't think Rob looks at it that way, which means that I don't think he's gonna be like, I'll let him in on the secret sauce, the special thing that's going on. I think he's going to look at some of these people and be like, that is a whole Olympian there. That man doesn't give a damn about my podcast.
I think that's actually true, right?
Yeah. Because to your point, Eric, we have sort of come full circle in the past decade where in 2014, everyone had a podcast and then it became more taboo. And now everyone has a podcast again, especially from a celebrity perspective, that there's very few people from this cast that I can imagine would take that bait. Unfortunately, the most likely would be Michael Rappaport, who I would imagine for many reasons Rob would not platform.
He's going to be persona non grata to Rob, which is why he has come up so little here.
Yeah, I don't see that man recapping episode 7 of season 51. That's not going to happen.
I could see Colton pretty excited to have his 12th, podcast as well. But he also is someone that I think Rob will be probably on a strict avoidance with.
Oh, I don't know. There could be a Chat BCC alliance because, of course, Rob, big adapter to Chat BCC. And Colton, I believe, has his own channel on Chat BCC.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's what they're going to bond over breakfast. Yeah, so this app, do you have it?
Now, something we have not hit on at all, and I don't think has happened in any of the American seasons of the show. If we had to look at the cast and guess who might Rob have a showman's I can't even say it with a straight face.
I mean, memorably though, Rob was the one to have the finger on the pulse of Romber, right? He said Rob and Amber are going to do it. So if anything, he might be the Cupid setting up who could be
That's
a possible.
Good. Thank you. You just saved my life from Nicole.
I don't know. Rob playing matchmaker. I mean, historically speaking, the man has been responsible for many relationships that have blossomed through the podcast. I don't know of any instances myself, but I'm sure there are out there.
I mean, I could see a bond between Rob and Maura Higgins, where Maura's trying to find something, and Rob's like, "Listen, to your point, I've done this before. Let me set you up."
Oh, the possibilities are endless. It's our job here to dissect and pick apart or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you just think about the fun he's going to have and we're all going to have with this, I mean, there's nothing in my mind what could really go wrong here? Who cares? Whatever he says is going to be hilarious. Whatever he does is going to be a big swing. It's funny to stop down and be analysts about this, but we all know we're watching this as embarrassing diehard stands for him and everything he does. Oh my God. Even if it's not funny, it's going to be the funniest thing. And because the one thing I'm sure of is that he's going to light up to be there, right? Yeah. I do think he realizes that there's a lot of people that they can choose from. I do think he realizes that this is a show that is hot right now. And I don't think he's one to look a gift horse in the mouth. I think he's going to show up with a great attitude and perspective on this. And I think that for however long he's there and however deep he gets his hooks in, he's going to enjoy it. And then we're going to enjoy it. It's very easy for the viewer to like the experience when the person themselves is liking for it. When you start to push up against watching someone is because they themselves are going through it. I don't see him having that experience or that level of stress here. I really think he's probably at peace with it as much as we are riding him here. And therefore I think it's going to be joyous. I'm excited for a whole new generation of people to be introduced to him.
Yes.
And that's something that, of course, is a net benefit that he's never going to talk about. So we can talk about it. I hope this brings thousands on thousands of new people to come and check him out and enjoy what he's doing. And that is a win for him, whether it's a win on the show or not, right? So, and I'm not even saying like, oh, it blows up the Traitors coverage. I'm saying they enjoy what they see of him. They seek out more content of him in a world of, creator-based content, and then they stick with him and ride him out. And these people don't even know the last 20 years of lore, and they now get to come along for the next 20 years, which would be amazing.
They are going to be in for such a rude awakening when they enjoy him on the Traitors and then go back to watch Survivor Amazon.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Maybe even Rob himself would be like, hey, don't go back to that
Maybe
one.
Just start with me now on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, though, is that I think what will help encourage that is, like, as you mentioned, if Rob is in his element, if he is in his comfort zone, like, he is such a talented person. And he would never say that himself, so we're going to say it for him. Rob, you are incredibly talented at what you do, and you're incredibly hardworking. And if that's on display, even a modicum on this show, people will want to check out what he does for a living. And so I agree, it's going to be a huge net positive. Now, my final question is, you talk about the opportunities this opens up for other people. I do want to indicate, Dina Katz cast The Traitors, also cast Dancing with the Stars. Mark Ballas is a professional dancer on Dancing with the Stars. As recent as this season, we saw Phaedra appear as a crossover contestant last year. Dylan Efron, of course, now that I remember his name, made the full crossover this year, made it all the way to the finale. Do we get Rob on Dancing with the Stars in fall 2026?
This is the single best and most absurd notion to come out of this entire insanity of the last 2 hours here. I will, on my own dime, be flying out weekly. I will be the Boston Rob in the audience for Dylan Efron cheering on. I could not think of anything better for this to culminate in than him being on Dancing with the Stars. It is such a ludicrous premise that I now must have this. Thank you, Mike.
Well, not to mention as well, Boston Rob has sort of said in no uncertain terms that he is getting calls to be on Dancing with the Stars. So imagine if he got the
oh my God.
It's him and Boston Rob.
That's when he has to hang it up at that point, right? Because if he's going to be on television, there's got to be another Rob there at that point.
Yeah, they're going to bring back Rob Kardashian again to compete if it's not Boston Rob.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if this does snowball effect into more opportunities for Rob on TV, I would love for him to consider taking them, especially if he had a positive experience doing this. I think we proved over the summer that the podcast will be in good hands if you got to go do something. So please go do it. I think that my feelings on Rob being on is that at the end of the day, we made it. Like, he made his return and no one can take that away from him nor us. My bucket list for him / my wish list is that we at least get him past 1 month of broadcast, meaning because we're getting 3 episodes.
Hefty considering we're getting half the season in the first 2 weeks.
Exactly. I would have said episode 5, but I don't want him gone after 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what I want. 1 month of broadcast. I want to see at least one thirst trap of him in the wild, where someone just pulls up. Pulls up on the algorithm. I want one quote that people start using that becomes like whether it's a meme or it's like a good moment. I'll take either. And I want him to, when I do my deep dive with him postseason, say, I had a good time. those things fulfilled, I'm happy. Now, obviously, if he goes all the way and wins, that's very much amazing, and I would take that. But I got to go with the more realistic, a little more wish list to feel satisfied with.
And I think when you asked Eric, like, what does he want to accomplish being there? I kind of think it's that. There are obviously nice secondarily business reasons for it, but I think I said this when the cast was announced, like, this should be looked at as it's weird to say dream come true because it kind of already happened the first time when he was on Survivor, kind of happened for the second time when he made this career. This was a dream deferred, I should say, that he has talked in the past about the numerous close calls he's had with coming back to Survivor, that he still had that hunger residually in the back of his stomach for going on decades. As you mentioned, Pooya, like, I think he feels a lot of accomplishment just touching down in Scotland. I think he feels that this is a moment of redemption for him in so many ways, but he's not necessarily going to take it as like, now's the time to rework my image. He knows the game, literally, and from a production perspective. He knows what is going to fly. He knows what is going to make great content. I'm not saying he's going to try to operate from a producer's perspective. I think he's going to keep a lot of that in mind while also simultaneously creating an experience that he knows is fulfilling to him. We can talk all we want to about what we know about Rob. At the end of the day, Rob knows himself more than any of us. And I think no matter what happens, especially with a show where maybe in certain ways, making your way to the fire pit is not a capital W win as much as other things, I have every amount of trust in him that whether he is murdered on that first night or he makes it all the way to the last day and tosses a green or a red sandbag into the fire, that he is going to keep us fed no matter how much time he has in that castle.
Well, I think he's one of probably the top 10 CBS reality stars that has wrongly been not given more and more opportunities. You know, like, he's one of the people there's been a hankering for that he really does deserve it. And you see some other people in the brought back time and time again. And Rob, it kind of feels like was lost in the shuffle. I think some of it is just the timing of when he was on the first few times and then when returnee seasons come and where he fits into them. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm willing to come out here and put these things on the record. It is completely egregious that he's not on the cast of Survivor 50. It is a literal outrage and a complete misunderstanding of what it is that is important to the fan base and a cornerstone of the show. It is ridiculous to me. Both Rob the player and Rob the podcaster is not a part of the celebration of 50 seasons of Survivor, and he would have been extremely additive to that. So I am absolutely thrilled that this opportunity came right on the heels of that. It's a preferred opportunity, a more fun opportunity, a better vacation, a great game, a new game, and a whole host of new audience that's going to say, I was not familiar with your game, sir, which he would not have gotten from the Survivor experience, right? So the timing of this to me is impeccable. And as someone who has discussed this with him a million times before, he's not fooling anybody. He's thrilled to be there. It's cool, man. It's awesome. Like, let's be happy. You know, it's so I agree. I think we're going to see the Rob that we know and love, who is just happy to be there. And then the instincts are going to kick in from there, right? It's not like he's going to be just, I'm so happy to be here, so kill me and I'm going to roll over. It's going to be, I'm happy to be here. And ooh, this is kind of like riding a bike. This is coming back to me real fast.
Yeah, well, I believe we're about to wrap up here for this preview. Just want to give you all a heads up. Those of you who were not present for last year's preseason coverage, this is not going to be the regular runtime, just so you're aware. We
almost got a spit take out of me.
we have well and truly broken the record of last year's, which I believe Mike was also present for, when Mike and Josh Wigler did the double combination of Dylan Efron and Lord Ivar. Right?
Yes, the most mentioned man on this podcast, even more than Rob, perhaps.
You know, maybe he is the clout now. I don't even know. But hey, if you, Lord Ivar, don't at me. It's fine. But yeah, so usually the runtime of these is going to be about 20 to 30, a little more bite size for you. But listen, the fact of the matter is, Rob is a close dear friend to everyone on this panel, and I have not podcasted about MILF Matter with anybody else on this cast. So I do not know them as well
yet,
as I know Rob. Not yet, at least. Exactly. But this was an absolute treat, and I cannot wait to see where we go. I wonder if this is going to age really well or age poorly. But hey, someone that's watching this after the season, let us know how we did. Eric, this has been a wish list, bucket list moment for me, honestly, getting to talk to you. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on. In the event that you would like to be found on socials, let the people know where that is.
Well, you probably can't find me. And if you did find me, what you would find is that while I reemerged out of an 18-year-old hole a few months ago, I have now since vanished again. I have really nothing to say for myself, nothing to promote, nothing to do. Actually, I'm hoping to change that soon, though. So when the time comes, I do have a couple of things brewing. Ooh. They're not going on TV shows, though, so don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I assure you that is not happening. But no one needs to find me. I have nothing to promote, nothing to say. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for thinking of me. And I apologize for making this 20 times the normal run length. I am nothing if not extraordinarily long-winded.
You are absolutely fine, Eric. And this did not feel, for what it's worth, did not feel like the length it is. But someone who definitely is not unfamiliar to making a podcast run triple the size of what it may be is my guy, Mike Bloom, who is about to list off all the things he is doing. Mike, let people know.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, at this point, the podcast is coming out. We are in a little bit of an off-season period, obviously, with Survivor coming to a close, Amazing Race coming to a close. Of course, you could check out the interviews I'll have there. I mean, yeah, between Eric and I, we're like a hurricane in terms of just two cross-long winds mixing together to create a weatherly storm. I mean, what I can also tease is that I will also be doing some coverage of the Traitors for Parade, which I am very excited about. I've done some sporadic coverage with somebody else over the past couple seasons, but I'm officially taking the hood on this time around, which I'm, of course, very pumped about, given my vested interest in this cast. And outside of that, you mentioned Survivor 50 a few times and made some very salient points, Eric. Survivor 50 will be coming to the air. February 25th will be the day before the Traitors finale. And sort of like taking, a page out of your book, Pooya, I'm going to be doing some previews for the cast members there. Of course, we'll have the interviews that I got to do with the cast of Survivor 50 out on the island. But much like these podcasts, we also want to give people a little bit of a reminder / resume of who each of these cast members are and, where they might fall in the grand scheme of things. So expect that in your feeds January, February, leading up to the premiere proper. Otherwise, check out everything I'm doing at a Mike Bloom Type.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Mike. Y'all can find me on all socials at Pooyaism, twitch.tv/Pooya. I do intend on throwing watch parties and watching the episodes as they go live on Peacock with you this season over there. So make sure you pull up and watch along with me. I will be still talking about 90 Day. That's for sure. Me and Liana will still be joining you every week over on the Pooya and Liana Lounge for our regularly scheduled shenanigans. And I will be talking the Traitors UK alongside the Traitors US as they're about to go hand in hand, only a week apart, January 1st for January 8th premieres. So make sure you are tapped in for all of those. And Annabelle will be joining me back for that coverage. So make sure you look out for those. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. We'll be back tomorrow with another person, another preview. But until then, y'all take care. Have a good one. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.